Hi, welcome back to Summer Reading List, the podcast where we take a look at some of your favorite,
or maybe your least favorite,
required reading books. I'm Alec La Frossia.
And I'm Monica Birch. And on today's episode, we will be covering the fantasy classic, The Hobbit, by none other than J.R.R. Tolkien.
And today we have a special guest,
If you
my brother.
Hello.
Alec La Frossia. Introduce yourself, say hi.
That's me. I'm Alec.
Why did you want to be on this episode?
Because I actually read The Hobbit before. I had to read it in middle school for summer reading,
Yeah.
Gifted English or whatever it was called. Makes
Just
you feel like you were smart.
bragging.
No, that's
Gifted English.
made it feel like you were smart. And I liked it a lot. And I recently read the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be fun to be on to talk about the first book in the series, quote unquote.
We're excited because we have not had a guest since 1984.
Yes,
So.
and that was almost a year ago now.
Scary.
Which is crazy. Time went
Heaps.
fast. Our first anniversary is coming up. So
Ooh, next month.
stay
Watch
tuned
out.
for that.
All right.
But yeah,
as
as
always,
always, we're going to begin with our previous experience with the book, with the novel, if we've read it before or not. If you wanted to kick us off, Monica.
I can kick us off. So my previous experience is from the movies. I will say that. But not the Hobbit movies, the Lord of the Rings movies. So I was saying to them, like how some people have Star Wars as like, oh, my parents watched this, and so I saw it as a kid, and I know people got this for Lord of the Rings too, but like that's what my household was like. So as a young kid, I would watch Lord of the Rings, full director's cut, 4 hours each, with my dad and sister. Deep nightmares about Gollum, like
Deep
scared
nightmares.
the crap out of me.
I think that every kid, at least people that I know, have nightmares about Gollum when they
At some
watched Lord of the
point,
Rings as a child.
Like to this day, I still see him. I'm like, but I'm like, okay, it's just like that childhood fear is coming back.
Yeah.
But then I watched The Hobbit in high school. I hadn't read him yet. Sorry. It was that age where I was like, I don't want to read a classic if I don't have to. So, but I was super into the movies, so I went and saw them in theaters, super into them. So I did see the Hobbit movies also before I read the book. And then I didn't read The Hobbit itself up until like March 2020. So, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So it was definitely worth it.
Yeah. Talking about Gollum, though, did remind me of that tweet. I don't know, other people have seen it. It was like viral like a while ago.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it was like your favorite one. But it was like talking about like Gollum and like, what was the other creature it's talking about? Like the elves in Harry Potter, maybe?
Yeah, Dobby or something, right?
Yeah. And so they were like, oh, when you used to go to the movies in the 2000s, you knew you were about to see like a little freak in the movies. It is talking about like Gollum and Dobby.
Aww. Honestly, that actor though, like I can't look at him. Like he's in Black Panther and he's in a bunch of other movies, and when I see him, I'm like,
don't know.
Andy Serkis is
Oh,
his name.
yeah.
He's Claw. Yeah, he does the mocap for Gollum and like a bunch of
but
other
like
stuff.
his
I
face
didn't
is
know that.
kind of like you can see the subtleties of his face. So it's funny too because then like Martin Freeman
Yeah.
is Bilbo, so they
Yeah.
have multiple scenes together now in different movies.
Oh,
But like
that's
every
cool.
movie he's in, I'm just like eye twitching. Like
I didn't know he was Gollum.
He was also the monkey in Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, he does
I've
a lot
never
of
watched
that.
he does a lot of like motion capture stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, so that actor scares me too now.
That's really
Yeah.
funny.
And I think he did like a reading of the books recently and like did the voice, and it was just
He did there's audiobooks that he's reading.
That's why he
Yeah.
did them.
Yeah.
He did them. So
I was wondering.
yeah. So anyways, what about you, Alec? Or you already said kind of you
Yeah, that was
gifted.
Right.
I read it in middle school. It was the first time I read it, so it was a while before revisiting it for this. But
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you liked it in middle
I
school.
liked it.
even?
Yeah, I liked it back then, and I
That's
liked it
good
now.
to know because this is about summer reading. So
Yeah.
interesting. It's like a middle school book considering it's like a adult. Like it's not adult. Like I know it's aimed for kids, but like
Yeah,
adults
it's
love
not
it.
the same as like what we were talking about, like The Giver and like Percy
Yeah.
Jackson, and that's like truly a middle school level book.
Yeah,
I guess that's why this is gifted. But
the reading level, I guess.
Yeah.
It was probably one of the only summer reading books I actually read.
yeah, a reoccurring theme in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But-
you, Marina?
So I read it once in high school, just for fun, I guess.
So I didn't, and I was bad, but you did.
I read it, I think when I was like 16.
You should have forced me to read it with you.
Yeah. And then I didn't watch like any of the movies except for the first one with you actually. And I weirdly don't remember it that much, like the movie.
It's
I
hard
don't
to
remember a lot about it either. So
Yeah. And I do remember the book a lot more, but I
Mhm.
don't remember this book as much as like I remember other books that I've read for some reason. I don't know if maybe it's because I quickly read it and then said I was like, oh, I'm done. I read The Hobbit, but I do remember like big chunks of it, just like
and you only saw like one Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah, so I've seen the first Lord of the Rings movie now because I was that annoying child who was like, I don't want to watch the movies because I'm going to read the books first, because I was that kid who read like all the Harry Potter and all the Hunger Games like before you saw the movie. So I was like, oh, well, like Lord of the Rings, I'll just wait and then I'll read the books one day. And I said that I was like, Lord of the Rings came out when we were like, I don't know, like 5 or something, some of the movies.
Yeah.
So I don't know why.
I think like even 99 or something.
Yeah, like the last one came out when we were like younger. But anyways, so I always did that, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch them because I'm gonna read it first. And then, I never got around to it. So I watched the first movie recently, I think like a year ago. And I did love it. And so I still do want to read the books eventually, but I'll probably still go watch the movies because I do know that there's a lot of differences in those as well.
Yeah. I feel like I would have done that if I hadn't watched them as a kid before, like, I could even read the books.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why when The Hobbit came out, I wasn't like, I'm gonna wait. I'm like, no, I love this. Like, I'm gonna watch all of this. Like, I think my friends and I were even, like, marathoning Lord of the Rings right before it came out in theaters. So.
Yeah.
And
That's
then, like,
cool.
when the third one came out, we, like, rewatched all of it again, plus the 2 Hobbits.
Yeah.
And then my family and I just did a Hobbit marathon, and we're about to do Lord of the Rings marathon. So obviously we are...
big into the
intense.
series.
Yeah, but I did really like revisiting it, and I guess I picked up on more, or at least I just remember more than when I read it last time.
So I guess that answers the next question of how'd you feel, which you liked it.
Yeah, I did like it now. I think we kind of all gave that away.
Yeah.
When we're talking about it.
I liked it still, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It was like, I don't know, you can tell why it's like so beloved.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a very easy fan favorite, very easy to get into. Doesn't feel very gatekeepy, and it's like fantasy because there are fantasy novels that are definitely like that.
It's super impenetrable in terms of just the lore hammers you so hard, the way it's written.
Yeah,
it's a slog to get through.
And I think this will transition nicely into us talking about the author.
Yeah.
Tolkien actually like wrote the stories originally for his kids.
That's probably why.
Which is why I think it's a very like easy to get into. It feels very open and welcoming as a story instead of like you have to know all these like, because there's like different like races of beings and different creatures and stuff, but
I feel like
they just like go right away. You don't have to like memorize, or you don't have to be like, this like clan had beef with this clan, and you have to know. Yeah, like you can know more.
That's what I was gonna say.
Cool to learn deeper lore, but it's not necessary.
I would say Lord of the Rings is pretty good about like, well, the Lord of the Rings like everything, because this is obviously the Hobbit that we're reading,
right.
But the Hobbit is pretty good about like, you can either start as is and it's super easy to understand, or you can read everything he's ever written and really get into the lore. It's not like kind of like you were saying, like you have to learn it all before reading the books. Like it's just like, it makes sense, but I could go deeper and get crazy.
Exactly.
Which we will one day.
Yeah. But I like that because again, it's one of those books, I feel like I've harped on this in a few episodes, but just like I like things that are accessible to everybody. Yeah. And it's a very accessible fantasy novel.
Well, this is a podcast about like books you had to read in school, so it's nice that it's not one that you're like, God, like
you're like, why did they make us read this?
Yeah.
There are a few like that for sure.
But so like Maria was saying, we can segue into the author, since we've already kind of mentioned that he wrote these for his kids, which is super fun. We were saying that it's interesting that we did 2 fantasies back to back. Both were, because if you remember last month we did Percy Jackson, but that is very much
already.
For real. That's very much middle-aged, like recent,
middle grade.
But middle grade.
Middle age.
I feel like it can be called that. But
I know, but every time you say it, I think of
it upsets you, and I forgot it.
People.
Yes.
But it's written. The author wrote them for their kids, and then they were like, hey, maybe this will work out as a good story. So like maybe that's just the golden rule, just make up fun stories.
If you have stories, or your kids have stories, encourage them to be written down in some capacity, or because just, like, you never know.
Maybe we should start telling each other stories.
Yeah.
Which ironically, maybe that's why the Tolkien movie did that. Like he had to like, which we don't endorse that movie, but like just thinking maybe that's why they did it. Like him and his friends had a club where they made up stories. So maybe they just didn't want to use his kids.
Oh, true.
But yeah, so that's just interesting. 2 months in a row now we've had similarities like that. Yeah. And it's a good gateway, like we talked about with The Giver and Hunger Games eventually. It's a good, like, you can read Percy Jackson and be like, oh, fantasy, epic. Now Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where it's just...
Because it follows, which we'll be talking about later, the hero's journey.
Giving us a little bit of
Yeah.
early
We're
stuff. But it was on
jumping around
topic a little bit.
But yeah, we always do that.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that more in depth later. But very basic hero's journey novel.
Yeah.
If you follow all the bullet points, they're all going to be there.
For sure. But I feel like, would you like to say the first act? Since you were the one that looked up why.
Oh, yeah. So we found out that Tolkien was born in South Africa, and we were like, wow, that's crazy. But then we remembered history and the British kind of, taking over everywhere.
Yeah.
So
that was all.
Yeah. That was pretty much the reason. His family moved to South Africa because his dad got like a job there because they transferred him because they were colonizing. That's pretty much it.
That's all. But it was interesting.
That is all.
He served in World War One. And actually, before that, he was at Oxford, and he's very much into scholarly things.
Academia.
And it even said he didn't right away try to join. He finished his studies at Oxford first.
Yes.
So, in linguistics, right?
Yes, I believe so.
I believe.
So that's pretty cool. He was a big English person.
Even worse, like the idea of like
language, getting into linguistics.
Which I hate that my brain thinks of like the Da Vinci Code and that whole like not series, but whatever those are called when it's like groups of books that aren't a direct series but they're all related. That character, he's a linguist and like that's
the guy Tom Hanks played.
Yeah, like he's not like a linguist, but like he does stuff like that. He does like symbology, or I'm getting it totally wrong. He just does symbols, but I feel like he was a linguist too.
I don't remember.
I don't remember enough. Yeah.
I read those and watched those too. So
Tom Hanks, that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so The Hobbit came out in 1937, so quite some time ago.
Yeah.
But honestly, not the oldest book we've done.
No.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah.
Frankenstein?
Yeah, Frankenstein is our oldest novel, I think, so far.
Which was our first novel, so how fun.
Yay.
But what's interesting, too, is we had a discussion. I know this is a debate online. People can't remember if this or Lord of the Rings came out first. But Lord of the Rings actually came out not till like 20 years later, which always amazes me how big of a gap that is.
Yeah, I was thinking that earlier, too. And it was because, like we said, like the story originally was just like for his kids, and then like the publishers encouraged him to like publish the rest of his stories that he had. So then that's why it came out so many years later.
I guess.
I think I read it took him like 10 years to come up with the narrative for Lord of the Rings in its entirety. So that's cool. Probably also.
I mean, the effort shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally probably one of the best classics.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one of the newer classics? I'm trying to think.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Like it's on the newer end of what's considered
classic. If you were... Actually, I was reading something the other day where people were asking like what you would consider newer classics, and this was definitely on there.
Which is funny because you don't think of it as that, because like
it has fun to read.
Old people. No, like when you read it, actually, it reminds you, because when you read older stuff like Frankenstein, you can feel it because it's not how we're used to speaking. Where I feel like that's partly what makes this easier. Is it's like he didn't speak that different in the 30s. And he didn't write that different in the 30s. Where like Frankenstein and some of the other ones were like totally different
English
styles and just like romanticism periods where it was just like, how can we spread this out and use weird language? So
yeah,
that's probably why it was easier, I think, too.
Yeah, I love his writing style too, because like in the book he does like we're gonna talk about this later, so that's not important right now.
The narrator's cutting
it. It's a very heavy narrator's voice to it.
Yeah,
and it makes it,
and it really works too.
Yeah, definitely.
Low key, like what if later episodes where the narrator's jumping in mid episodes.
Yes,
I was saying to them, I really like how it feels like not sing-songy, but it flows in a way that feels like it has a rhythm. It's lyrical for sure. Thank you. And then I mean, he even includes songs in there that like different races sing.
The Hobbit is a musical.
Oh my gosh.
That would be interesting. The Hobbit musical, that needs to be the next adaptation.
They already have songs.
That makes sense. Yeah, there are like he's written actual songs.
I was saying earlier, I was like, ooh, there's a point I want to bring up, but I won't tell you guys yet. And it's that The Hobbit is a musical.
That's funny.
It just is, which is, I was thinking about it in my head.
We'll have to go see it.
Yeah. I don't know why nobody's done that. Maybe somebody has and we didn't look that up.
I don't know. That would be interesting to see and think about.
That would be cool.
Wait, are you saying it is a musical?
No, I'm saying maybe
She's
somebody
wondering
did.
if it is.
And we just don't know.
I thought you were saying there is a Hobbit musical, and I was like, that makes sense. That fits.
Yeah, that would be cool. if it exists already, we're gonna find out later. But
Just don't make Gollum sing, please. Like,
Oh, a Gollum song when they're doing the riddles in the dark part.
they
That'd
can
be
do
so
like
terrible.
riddles, and maybe the riddles can have a little bit of like a
like a
vibe,
jingle.
but don't make him like sing
Yeah.
a whole.
But I do love how much they sing for like no reason at all.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think, obviously, of like when he's telling these stories to his kids, if
He
he
might
was
have been
like
singing
making
Singing the
cute little
song for
songs to
him.
his
Aw.
kids. So
Especially the cleaning up song,
yeah,
because that one's kind of light and fun.
it's literally like the Barney tidy up song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm gonna sing to my kids instead.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm gonna be like, what is wrong with you? You psychopath. Did you have anything interesting about him that we haven't mentioned?
Not really. Not off the top of my head.
Don't worry, I'm just kidding. We said all your things that you said to us.
Yeah,
anyway.
I
Yeah,
was
we kind of
saying.
stole your talking
He was like,
points.
hey, did you know that he wrote these for his kids? And we're like, well, we're gonna say it now.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk about that now. Okay, yeah. So I guess that's a brief history on him. Very brief.
There was one thing I was gonna add. I just wanted to see first from his family's website, or like a Tolkien.org website. It cracked me up that apparently the idea of the Hobbit came from, he was grading papers and a student didn't answer a question, but he just wrote, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. So like a student just wrote that on a paper, and Tolkien was like, well, what's a hobbit? And he like delved into that, and that's basically what gave us the Hobbit, and then what gave us Lord
It gave
of
us
the
the
Rings.
first line of the Hobbit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Iconic,
So,
very iconic.
I want to know what it's like being that student and realizing that you're
I wonder, did he ever get credit?
right, like your board exam
I hope
little
he
written
did.
comment, 'cause
Or
he didn't
like,
wanna
did
answer
he
the
ever
question.
even notice? I mean,
Yeah.
he must have.
Probably now, at least, like, or not now, because
He'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Tolkien died in
73.
73. So
He was 81.
Ah.
So lived to
so
quite a
maybe
long
it's
time.
the guy's
possible that the
alive.
student is alive.
It's older, yeah, because it would have been like
Very
the
old.
30s or something.
Yeah. Okay, actually maybe not. But anyways, I can't math, so this is not a math podcast.
He would have to be like 100.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Then he would have been born in like 1910 or something, 20-ish years old in college.
Okay, yeah.
So around, no,
So-
because it's not 2000, no, like
Probably
120.
If you're not dead and you're listening to this, sound off in the comments.
There's obviously a reason that we are an English podcast and not a math podcast.
Yeah, I literally couldn't do that math in my head. That's fine.
I thought it was 2000, so.
Okay.
So
So
yeah, that's really it with Tolkien. You
that's
know,
his little brief summary. There's a lot more to read on him, obviously, if you're interested. It's out there.
World War One was not fun for him, but is
Yeah.
it for anyone?
I don't think I don't think it was fun for any soldiers
No,
involved.
he got sick and got to leave. And
Yeah, he was actually deemed medically unfit
Yeah.
for battle. So
'Cause he
that's
had-
part of why he was discharged.
what was it called? Like the
The trench fever.
yeah, trench fever, but
Yeah.
it was what? Not typhoid. Was it typhoid?
I don't remember specifically.
He
It
had
was a bad illness.
the trench
Yeah.
fever was just like the name for it because people
Yeah,
were catching
because-
in the trenches, and he did. So
So yeah,
I guess-
fun times.
Something that I did want to mention now that I think about it is that we were talking about how he wrote the story for his kids. It's because apparently he was a very big family man and
Yeah,
very loving towards his kids and his
that's
wife,
awesome.
and who was apparently very supportive of his stories getting big and was very happy to be someone married to like a famous
Aw.
author.
Aw.
We love that,
Yeah.
especially because most of the classic
I
authors
was
have
about
like
to say,
really
not
bad
all
stories.
the authors we're going to cover on the show have the greatest backgrounds or stories. So
I'm trying
very
to think. I
nice.
feel like we've picked ones that have okay backgrounds so far.
yeah, and sometimes questionable.
Yeah.
But not,
But not like scary, but I could be blanking on some.
yeah. But he was a great person, I
Yeah.
guess, is what we're finding out from the
What
research.
we've been told.
Yes.
From the record,
If you
let the
know
record
other
show.
things, tell us. We'd love
But
to hear.
yeah, so, and his family had nothing but great things to say.
Yeah.
hmm
You said that they were like not supportive of.
Yeah, they didn't like the bio movie of him, and I kind of can see why hearing that, because it was like, not that it was so much negative on him, but I feel like in the second half he was sort of really focused on trying to write The Hobbit or write a story, and so he was like ignoring his family, or his wife was like, be present, and it's like, that sounds like the exact opposite of what you just described.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I read is just how supportive she was of his
Yeah.
writing and storytelling. So it's
Right.
weird to spin it a different
Yeah.
way in the movie.
Like, she was supportive, but she was like, you're not present, or something like that. Like, I haven't seen it in a while, but I just feel like he was like zoning out, maybe having PTSD, but like really just thinking about the book, and she was like, no. So
Yeah. So that is everything we have on him.
yeah.
And so we're gonna do
Time
like
to
a
get
quick
into the
little
plot.
dance through the plot and
One
talk
of the
about
most
things.
famous books ever, and
As
this
we
is
go.
my heart. This is probably my favorite book. I actually do list this on a lot of things as my number one book. Because there's like a few others I like Pride and Prejudice. But it's a beast to get through, where this one's not. This one's actually enjoyable.
So this is a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so we're gonna just kick it off as we do. We meet Bilbo. He lives in his little hobbit hole.
Yeah.
And everything that's described about the hobbits just sounds so ideal.
Yeah, I want to live there.
Like best way to live
there.
life.
Yes, and then they eat like 7 courses a day.
Second lunch,
second breakfast. Yeah.
Second
They
dinner.
eat so much food, which is
Have tea,
goals.
have supper.
Yeah, they have little teas and stuff. And it's describing Bilbo, and we like find out about him that he has like different lineage from like his mom and his dad's side. Like his mom's side was adventurous.
Yeah, 4 hobbits.
Yes.
4
hobbits are pretty like
Not adventurous.
homebody.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he has like a little bit of a spirit adventure like
Yeah,
in him.
in him somewhere.
And so we kind
they're
of get like a
called
hint of that.
Tooks.
Yeah,
Yes.
they were
Tooks.
Tooks.
But he's a Baggins.
Yes.
Who are like kind of rich in terms of like hobbits.
So he's a little bit on like high on the hobbit totem pole.
So he's resting in his nice, wealthy hobbit hole and just living life in his front yard, his garden, when a friendly old wizard
Who
comes
probably everybody knows, even if you don't know
Yeah,
anything about
yeah,
personally
like,
one of my favorite characters of the series.
of like anything ever.
Yeah.
We meet, well, he's sitting outside in his garden, and we meet Gandalf. Ooh.
Who's
One
he?
of my favorite characters in the entire series, and probably of like
Yeah,
anything.
probably any.
Of like all things.
Probably one of the best
The
characters
best
ever.
literary wizard ever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's actually not called Gandalf the Grey, right?
No, I actually tried to look and see if he was, and I don't think he's called Gandalf the Grey in this book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, so like a lot of that kind of happens like in between The Hobbit and then the actual trilogy of Lord of the Rings, because a lot of things in The Hobbit
Like a lot of
weren't-
context.
yeah, was not like expanded upon
Yeah.
until the trilogy, because it was just like that was a
Oh.
standalone story at first. So
Yeah.
then everything kind of gets changed, not changed, but
Added
just like
to.
more detail is
More
added.
detail. Yeah, like the Hobbit place doesn't have a name in the
So
beginning.
the Shire isn't the Shire until Lord of the
They
Rings.
just said like, what is it?
Underhill, Bilbo's little house
It's
Underhill
under
is
the
what they
hill.
call it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like across the lake or something is like meaning you're leaving the town, where they would just
Yeah.
say the Shire in like Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings.
So I think I actually did say that in our last podcast. I was like, we're going to the Shire, and then I forgot that they don't even call it the Shire.
It is
It's the
the
Hobbit.
Shire, honestly.
It is.
I
I
feel
definitely
like it's
said
more-
in like half of our promo Instagrams.
Honestly, yeah, Lord of the Rings is so much more known that I feel like it was more shocking learning they don't say
Yeah,
Gandalf the
especially
Grey
because
or
we
the
know
Shire.
it, so like the connotation's just in our head already.
Yeah.
So we're
Mhm.
assuming that it's already been said.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't.
Which has definitely been interesting, I will say, as someone who's, I mean, this happens when you watch like any movie and then read the book, seeing what's there and what's not has been pretty interesting. Which like I kind of knew certain things weren't there because I know people were like outraged in the movies. But like even some of the like little things, I'm like, oh, like not hearing Gandalf the Grey or not hearing the Shire, that was
Yeah.
definitely interesting. But yeah, so we start out, Gandalf approaches Bilbo in his hobbit hole, and he basically, it's like kind of a just kind of like, good morning, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But they get to a point where Gandalf is kind of like hinting at he wants Bilbo to join him on an adventure, and Bilbo's like, nope, good morning, and like slams the door on him.
Yeah.
But then suddenly at tea time, he
Yeah.
hears a knock on the door, and he thinks it's Gandalf.
Yeah. He like tells him like, we'll have tea tomorrow,
Yeah.
that's fine. And then Gandalf brings a party with him.
Yeah, so all of a sudden these dwarves start spilling in. And that's the thing too, like what we were talking about with you don't have to learn stuff. Like you hear dwarf and you're like, what is that? But it's similar to like other lore where it's just,
Yeah.
there's nothing like new and innovative. Same
Yeah.
with wizard. Like
I was
with a
gonna
wizard.
say, I guess we could have like done a little bit of research on how like
Did he
common
start
it was
it?
in the
Yeah.
what
He
am I
probably
trying to say?
could
in the cultural sphere.
Yeah, maybe he was like the
Before.
innovator of all this.
Yeah, because obviously fantasy has like existed in other novels too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like this
It could have just been,
popularized-
even
yeah,
other ones?
like maybe his was what brought it to such a, like you said, cultural
Yeah,
forefront.
like
Like they,
we know.
he is considered one of the fathers of modern fantasy.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
There's definitely some Hobbit fan watching this like, he definitely did this. How are you guys saying maybe?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like we
Sorry.
said, we're
We researched a lot and things just are like coming up as we talk.
yes.
So, we're human. We're actually hobbits, but anyways.
I'm a newer fan, so I'm learning.
I'm an old fan, but I'm new in the sense of like trying to get really into it.
Yeah.
outside of just
Into
like
the
watching
deep.
and reading. Yeah, into the deep.
But
But so they shut up.
sorry, bringing some TikTok on here.
That's all I'm thinking about now. But basically all the dwarves start showing up at Bilbo's house and they're like all trying to be polite, but Bilbo in his mind is like, what the heck? Which that was super fun to read because it was comical. It was very like, hello, and then on the inside he's like, what the heck are you doing here?
He's like putting on airs of being polite because that's what hobbits are supposed to do.
Yeah.
But he's getting more and more annoyed that all these people are just at his house.
I know. And then like when everybody's eating all his stuff and he's like, oh, I guess, are you guys staying for dinner? And
Like,
it's like,
of
why are
course.
you?
Here's
like,
our
we
order.
think that, and then
Maybe that's the downside to being a hobbit.
you
is
have
that,
to be nicer.
Yeah, there's so much social
But since
niceties
he's
they walk through.
tookish, he
Yeah.
doesn't like it.
Yeah, he's a little feisty.
But eventually the rest of, they came in like groups or like individual, but the rest of the hobbits showed up and they were actually, the dwarves,
Yeah.
thank you. The rest of the dwarves showed up and they were actually, I wouldn't say the most important, but the ones that are probably the most mentioned in the plot, which is Fili, Kili, and Thorin. Which, is he ever called he's called Thorin Oakenshield.
Yes,
yes,
he is.
I had to make sure. You'll hear me say that a lot, by the way, in this podcast. Like, is he? Because again, I've seen the movie so much that my brain like fogs.
Melded the two
Which
together.
like, don't come at me. I know the story is better, okay? But just sometimes my brain is like, what have they said?
Yeah.
What was added? But eventually, those three dwarves come in with Gandalf.
Yes.
And I love their entrance with like them falling on the ground and Thorin's trying not to be like upset that like the king just fell on the ground.
His face.
He's like, which I'm pissed. I'm trying to try not to keep going back and forth, but the movie has him enter so cool, and I'm like, it would have been so much funnier if he fell in and just had to be like, like.
I hate that movies, I feel like a lot of times, especially in like literature adaptations, they try to make everything suave and like
yes, because it's cooler for the, I don't know, common blockbuster audience that they're trying to sell it to.
But then
it
like
would've been
in
so much
reality,
better.
like a comical scene right there would have been really funny.
Yeah, because the rest of the scene was kind of comical. They just didn't give Thorin any of it, or like, even though Thorin himself isn't funny, it still was funny to like see Thorin
I guess it's
fall.
more of because like, you know, in different mediums, especially like in movies, they kind of have to do like a show don't tell kind of thing, and in literature you can kind of
so you had
be
to
like,
know
no, but
he
he's
was...
still important even though he fell down.
like the king is upset, but he's very cool. I loved too the way like Thorin is described as like he would talk forever. That was really funny to me.
Yes, he beats around the bush when it comes to a point
because he thinks his voice is so important.
Important
you could just
that
like
everybody needs to keep listening. Yeah,
and then Bilbo would piss him off like internally because Bilbo would be like, "Wait, what does that mean?" And he's just like,
"Wait,
let me finish." But he wouldn't say that because he also has to act polite because he's like kingly.
Yeah.
So I just love that part. Maybe that might be giving away my favorite, but we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, so Gandalf is telling Bilbo about an adventure, and the dwarves are kind of explaining that there's an adventure that
he's getting interested.
Yeah, and they're trying to recruit him as like their 14th member on the journey. And so
as their burglar is what they call him.
I felt like a teacher there for some reason. Like,
what?
And what is the answer?
It was
Alec?
like a question on one of those quizzes.
Yeah, that's true.
What was Bilbo?
To make sure you did the reading over the summer.
An AR test.
Oh no, not AR tests.
That's definitely
Do
an
those
AR.
even exist anymore?
I don't think
Let
so.
us know.
If you're in school, let us know if AR tests exist, I guess.
They were pretty easy, so like sorry if you don't have to because that was a pretty easy homework.
Yeah.
But whatever. Anyways, they are, like Marina said, they are explaining the quest. And what is the quest? I did the teacher thing again.
I was gonna let you take
Oh, I'll take it then. I'm excited about it.
I was like, yeah.
So the quest is to go back to their homeland of the Lonely Mountain and take it over.
Yes,
but
because it had been
issue.
taken from them previously.
It had been
so
taken.
They haven't been there for quite some time.
At least 100 years.
Yep.
Because their lifespans are different than human.
Yeah.
So it's been a long, long time. But Thorin was there when it happened. I think they were all like there, but like not there because otherwise they'd be dead. Because a dragon came, Smaug. Yeah, I think it's Smaug, but like
Smaug.
It's gonna bother me if I try to do that. How would you pronounce it?
I mean, I say Smaug, but I know that's probably wrong.
I'm just thinking of like Benedict Cumberbatch trying to say
yeah,
it.
too.
Like
That's
Smaug.
what I'm picturing too.
Call him Benny. There you go.
Benny.
Oh, Benny the dragon.
But yeah, so he came and pretty much killed all of the dwarves.
Literally
almost.
all of them, except like Thorin said we were outside, so like we
so
just
they were
watched them
out.
cry.
Yeah.
And he didn't just do them. There was like a opulent city that was at the base of the mountain that was ruled by like men that were friends with the dwarves, and he destroyed all of them.
Yeah, because
Dale, I think it was called.
Yeah, it was Dale. And the reason that the dragon came is because, and I was laughing at them earlier, dragons love gold. Like, that's just a thing in these books. And I love that we just accept that. Like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, a dragon loves gold. Even though, like, it's just, they like gold. So they go and sit on it and sleep.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, they're just greedy creatures.
Yeah, just kept on.
Yeah.
Into
And
now.
the mountain
Yep,
had,
it's still a thing.
I was
Yeah.
thinking specifically of Shrek.
Stop.
Because when they
Love
go
her.
there,
Yeah,
she's
that she's sleeping on a
pile.
big pile of gold.
That's probably
Yeah.
specifically a Smaug reference.
Yeah.
For sure. Because Shrek was doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, so I don't know why I said but no. Yeah, Smaug like came and destroyed everybody, destroyed Dale, because they had a lot of gold, because that mountain was just like, I'm like blanking on words, but it was just full of like treasure. Thank you. Oh my god, I was like, what is that called? Like when you just mine it and it's
Treasure, gems, gold, shiny things.
Gold, both rot and unrot. They say a lot in the book to make sure you know it's raw and made into the stuff.
Thank you, raw. Oh my god, raw materials.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna sit here the whole podcast just like eye twitching, like what was I trying to
And
say?
we're like, you can do it.
Marina's like shiny.
Shiny gold?
But so yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, now my mind just like but no, so that's what the quest is about. They want to get their mountain back, but they have to defeat a dragon or sneak around a dragon.
Yes.
I feel like, did they ever really like say what the goal was in it, or was it just like sneak around the dragon?
One of the things that Bilbo brings up to his frustration is how like bad the end of their plan was.
Yeah,
Because they
there
keep
is
mentioning,
no end of the
we're gonna
plan.
go to the
That
mountain.
is so funny to
And he
me
keeps
that
like, okay,
Bilbo
now
mentions
there's
it a few times.
yeah, there's a
He's
dragon here. What the hell was the plan?
They're
of
like,
that
you're
dragon
going
here?
burglar, and it's like, okay, but
He's
how does
like-
that get him out?
like, right. He's like, I can pick up like 3 things and we can take that if you want.
Yeah, but the mountain's still
Right.
overtaken, and that's still not enough gold.
Okay, so now that we've thoroughly explained the adventure,
Yeah,
even though
yes.
we haven't even like moved on from our first point, we can kind of do a little bit quick.
Yeah,
Go through some
quick
of
hits.
these quick hits. Yeah.
But so basically, Bilbo says he's gonna do it, wakes up in the morning, thinks he's not, and then
Yeah, because
Gandalf's
everybody's
like,
gone.
let's go.
But then they
let's
left
go.
a little note for him,
Yeah.
and then
And Gandalf rushed him to
Yeah.
like a pan. Like, I feel like that would happen to us if like Alec walked in, he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And you'd be like, "I don't know," and like freak out and run, and then be like, "Wait, what are we doing?" Like,
yes, so he leaves in haste.
Yeah.
Leaves his hobbit hole.
and we join the
yeah.
adventure, which we can definitely speed through all of these for sure.
Yeah, we can speed through a few points. Okay, so the first like dangerous encounter they have is with trolls.
The trolls.
Yes, so then Bilbo kind of gets a taste for what they're in for.
But he doesn't do much. He's kind of
Yeah,
like
he's
just
kind
watching, ignored.
Yeah.
He tends to get ignored a lot, which is
He does.
works out in his favor. But basically, there's trolls. Gandalf tricks them, and they burn up when the sun comes out.
Yeah,
They turn to stone.
They turn to stone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they find a cave full of treasures and swords, and they all collect swords, which doesn't sound that important right now, but it is important.
Important in a
Yes.
big way.
Yeah,
Yes.
very, very.
Okay.
So like we said, this is basically like a hero's journey. So there's just going to be like random stops of like adventures.
Yeah.
So like in between this, they were just like, we're traveling, and that happens in
Yeah.
all of them.
They
So,
travel. They go on.
This book has a lot of like narration more than dialogue, exposition more
Yeah.
than
Yes.
dialogue, which usually drives me crazy. But again, with how he writes, it's actually really entertaining.
Yeah, I actually really love it.
So basically, like listening to someone tell a good story.
Yes.
But what was his next one? Oh, we meet Elrond
Okay, yeah.
in the wilds.
Yes, it's actually something fun I wanted to bring up
Yeah.
about Elrond is that he's very. Anyone who knows like the Lord of the Rings, they know he's like, an important elf lord or whatever. And Rivendell is a big opulent place. It's described very beautifully, and time flows differently there. But in this
Yeah.
book, when they mention Elrond, and they just keep mentioning the last fair house before the
Yeah.
wilds, and it just makes it sound like he's like maybe in a big mansion.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah, at the
just
most.
a very nice log house that can fit them all, and that's how it's described. And I think it's very funny that it's like
Yeah.
it's just a homely house that's very nice and pretty with this very cool elf guy
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
And like all the other elves you see, they're not also in like some fabulous kingdom. It's just like they're in the woods and they
Yeah.
happen to be there, just
and
like
they're
hanging
singing
out.
and they
They're making fun of them. That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Like just roasting them hardcore.
Yeah. And so Elrond helps them in a pretty big way.
Yeah, he can
How so,
read.
Alec?
Oh yes, he reads the
Such a
moon
moment.
the moon runes that are on the map that
Yeah.
Gandalf has given them of the Lonely Mountain.
which was also hilarious, which is kind of behind us, but it was hilarious that they were, both Gandalf and Thorin were kind of pissed off that they didn't see that first, even though, like,
Yes.
there's literally no way they could have seen it.
Yeah.
Like, because it had to be on that specific night, which always bothered me. I was like, oh, that's too annoying. But I think one
Like,
time
too specific.
Too specific, but I think one time I said that to my dad, and he was like, but that's the point. Like,
Yeah.
that's to show that it's, like, faded. And I think they even say that, but I was just like, when I watched it when I was younger, I was like, that's too obvious to happen. It's like, no, but that's the point. Like, their quest is meant to be because they
Yes.
happened to read it on that night. So,
Yes.
interesting little factoid there.
Okay, so after they...
Do you have another thing?
No, I was just saying it's the runes that reveal the secret entrance, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay,
there's a secret entrance, which is actually how, we didn't really mention this, but Thorin's grandfather, who was the king at the time of Smaug, and his father survived, and he never understood how, and now he realizes,
They
they
escaped.
snuck out.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was kind of shitty, because I'm like, how did they not pull more people out with them? Like, you could have just told people, come this way, and instead
Yeah.
your whole kingdom, except you two, dies.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyways, kings are gonna king.
Kings are gonna king. They're gonna only care about themselves and their gold,
Yeah.
which Thorin...
Which actually
Be
they
careful.
kind of describe
They
with
do,
the dwarves,
yeah.
and they're saying, like, as all wealthy and whatever.
Yeah.
And they do that with Smaug, too.
They
They're
do.
Like, the wealthy hoard their wealth.
And it's
which-
like,
Oh, commentary on wealth
I
in
know.
this.
It's really mentioned, like, in the movies too, he gets straight up, like, sick from having money. Thorin does. Like, he gets rich and he's just like, and I know he does it a little bit in here, but like, they
Mhm.
show it a lot of him, like, hallucinating, like, going nuts when the
Yeah.
gold's
Gold
around.
sickness, I think they
Yeah.
described it as.
Oh.
'cause,
Like gold madness or
yeah,
something. but
that greedy master of the lake that we'll meet later also
it has that,
gets struck by it and tries to run away with money.
yeah. So once they leave Elrond, they have another bad encounter, because this one was a good one. This was positive. But they decide to camp out in some caves, and something happens that's not good.
Yes. Something happens that's not good. So they actually, like, explore the cave a little. They deem it, like, safe. And then they're
Mhm.
like, okay, we can stay here for a little bit. But then, actually, there was a little crack. And
They're
then some...
sleeping on a trapdoor.
Yeah. Some goblins.
Evil goblins.
Yeah,
Evil
so they're there,
goblins.
and they kind of attack.
Yeah.
And they take
They take
their
them into
homies.
the tunnels of the Misty Mountains where the cave was and everything.
But Bilbo sneaks away, right?
Yes.
Because Bilbo doesn't get trapped like
He
they
doesn't. No.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember why.
do. I believe he's just like, they forgot about me.
He's the one that saw them first, right?
Yes, because
yes.
he didn't like it in there, so he didn't sleep very
Mhm.
heavy. So he kind of was like
Yeah,
lucid
so,
dreaming.
yeah, okay, now I'm remembering. It
Yeah.
describes Bilbo as, like, because he was, like, kind of half awake, like, listening. He actually heard, like, the crack happen and then, like, the
Yeah.
goblins show up, so he was kind of able to just, like, scoot away before they
Yeah.
He
grabbed
was able
everybody.
to alert Gandalf, who
Yes.
disappears in a flash.
Yeah.
Gandalf is I don't know why I find
He's
it so
flaky.
funny,
It's
but
so
he
funny.
really just disappears. Like,
Yeah.
he just goes away,
He
doesn't
did the
tell
same
them
thing
anything.
with the trolls. He
Yeah.
was gone for a bit and then came back to save them.
Yeah,
and
he was
did a
like,
very
"Oh,
similar
here,
thing with the
I'm
goblins.
back, guys."
I've been doing stuff.
And I just find it so funny because then even later in the book when he tells them he's gonna leave, he's just gone for like the
The
worst
rest of the
stuff that's
series,
happening
yeah.
to them. When they could really use a wizard, I feel like.
I feel like it's described in later, it's not, I feel like I know it's described in later things what he's doing, and it's very important, but like when you just read The Hobbit, Tolkien was probably not thinking of it. He's probably just like, and he's gone.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, well, these characters need to do stuff, so the wizard needs to leave.
Leave.
Yeah.
Have him solving
Well,
all their problems.
That is a big issue with like, I keep mentioning my dad. My dad and I have discussed that with like Captain Marvel.
Mhm.
There's a reason I feel like that character probably shouldn't be brought up enough, and it's because she would just destroy
Destroy
everybody.
everything,
So
every
it'd be
issue.
so
When
pointless.
you're too OP, then you gotta
Yeah.
be taken out of the equation.
It's like,
sometimes.
oh, she happens to not be on Earth, but she could have like won everything in a second. So
Right.
it's similar with Gandalf. Like Gandalf has to be busy, otherwise there's no
They gotta
plot.
nerf him.
Yeah. So the goblins is kind of a big deal. They're trapped dealing with the goblins, yada yada yada. But something even more important, in my opinion, is
Yes.
happening at the same time, and that's Bilbo.
When they are trying to escape from the goblins, one of the dwarves, Balin, I believe, is like one of the only ones nice to Bilbo at first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accidentally drops him because they get grabbed by
Right,
a goblin,
yes.
and Bilbo.
So the hobbits can't run as fast as the dwarves,
No.
even if they try, which
The
it was described
the
like
dwarves are very athletic.
Bilbo is like
Yeah.
running as fast as he literally can, and he's like way far behind them,
Yeah.
so he gets carried.
They're like unnaturally athletic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he drops poor Bilbo, bonks his
Oh.
head, and he gets separated from the group.
Yeah.
Bonk.
Bonk. And then
Thinking
when
of like
he,
the Shiva, like
yeah,
bonk.
the meme. And then when he wakes up, he's all alone, and Bilbo's like, okay, this sucks.
What an iconic scene is coming up. I absolutely love the scene, even though
and so
I'm
he
terrified
actually
of it.
is just like, you know, like on like the like cave ground, and then he's like, oh, this ring over here, and
What
he
a
just puts it in
pretty
his
ring.
pocket
Yeah.
because
Why did you put it on?
he just is like, oh, this is cool, puts it in his pocket,
Yeah.
and then he's trying to look for a way out.
Yep. And in that he finds Gollum, whose
Dun,
name
dun,
isn't
dun.
Gollum,
Yes.
it's Smeagol. But
Smeagol.
Gollum, I like to tell people this fact for some reason. Gollum isn't even like really what he's called in The Hobbit at all. It's just a sound he makes in his throat. So I think that's kind of his nickname because of that. But it's like, that wasn't like a name or anything. He just like hacks and coughs and it sounds like that.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense because I feel like as a kid he would do that in the movies. And I was like, why is he coughing his name? And now I'm like, oh no, he's just coughing and that's why it's his
That's
name.
why they gave him the name, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But he only refers to himself as my precious.
yeah. And he's referring to like something else.
Yeah.
Which you know probably, but we'll be sneaky about it.
Yeah.
But so Bilbo meets Gollum and he likes to eat meat. By the way, there's not really a name for Gollum other than Gollum creature-wise. He's just a creature. He's explained more in Lord of the Rings, but
yes, to give him a backstory
he
there.
actually has a
But
backstory.
it is hinted at he lived a different life in this,
Yeah.
once outside of the creepy tunnels, and he had
Right, because
family
it
and
kind
friends.
of talks
but
about how he remembers things once he
Yes.
thinks about it really hard.
So he's person-like or hobbit-like, or it's not hobbits that he is. He's a different.
He's humanoid-like.
He's humanoid-like.
I think in Lord of the Rings it's described that he was something that then later the hobbits are descendants of.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So he's not
close.
Yeah, they're not as pure as hobbits, which, instead of being sneaky, I'll just say that's why the ring can taint him, because he doesn't have the pureness that hobbits has. So he can be like overtaken by it and become evil. So that's why Gollum is the way he is.
Yeah. So
Just a
he's
quick
actually the
backstory.
one who had the ring that Bilbo found on the ground.
But
And
doesn't
he,
know
at that point, hadn't realized that he had misplaced it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he encounters Bilbo, and then they have a
little
riddle
dispute.
off.
Yeah, because Gollum wants to eat him.
Bilbo.
Yep. And Bilbo wants a way out. So.
Right. So
And
Bilbo's
to
like,
not
hey,
be
you know a way out, and I don't want to get eaten. So what if we do riddles?
Which
and
is
then
so funny.
if I win, you show me how to get out of here. If you win, you can eat me.
Yeah. And you wonder if he was like, Tolkien was reading this with his kids and they were like coming up with riddles on the spot.
I
Like,
know.
that'd be so
I was
cute.
thinking that too, because I was like, these riddles, what are they?
Some of them, like, I think there's even one where it's like, oh, you probably knew that answer. And I was like, I didn't know.
Okay,
know,
thank you.
yes.
I
It
was
said
like-
that too. It was like, you probably guessed it was a fish. And I was like, in
No.
what world was the
Maybe
answer
in the
fish?
30s and like England, riddles were a thing. But yeah, every time
Yeah.
he said that, I was like,
He even said something about like breath, and then it was a fish. And I'm like, okay, but fish do breathe, but like underwater, just not the same how we breathe.
Yeah, I was like, boy, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
Maybe it
And
was, like,
then-
sorry,
about
I'm
eggs
stupid.
or something.
Yeah,
and I
the
was
one.
like,
I didn't
oh,
know.
For me, it was like the teeth too, like 30-something white horses on a red hill, and he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's an obvious one. It's teeth, and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Teeth are not horses.
So that was a little interesting. Some of the riddles I feel like didn't make sense, like we were just saying, and then
Yeah, they were fun,
obviously at the end when he just asks like, "What's in my pocket?"
cheater.
That's cheating because that's not a riddle.
It's
and
not a riddle.
it's funny because Gollum even says like, "That's not a riddle," but then
But he
he's
still
like,
goes
"I'm
with
gonna
it.
go for it anyway."
I feel like it's a little sibling when the bigger
Yeah,
sibling
'cause-
cheats,
Yeah,
and
like,
they're like,
tricks
that's
them.
not fair, but then still has to do it.
I goes with him where he's like, all right, but if you're going to do that, I get 3 guesses. I was
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
like a weird thing in Gollum's mind where he's like, that balances out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, no, that's not even
And he
close.
doesn't
Literally
get the
anything could be in his
guesses.
pocket. And then he fails, and then he asks him like repeatedly, so what is in your pocket? And I feel like that should be the rule,
Yeah.
like you gotta tell him at the
Yeah.
end, because what if you're lying?
Which is interesting. Bilbo felt like, I can't tell you.
Yeah, because at that point, Gollum had realized that the ring was missing. He had
Mhm,
misplaced it, so he has a sneaking suspicion that Bilbo has it.
Especially the reason he was looking for it is because he was going to use it. Wasn't he going to use it to like
Attack Bilbo,
attack
kill
Bilbo?
him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
even
it
though
makes
he
him-
lost.
The ring
yeah.
makes you invisible.
Yeah.
So he was going to sneak up on him and eat him anyways.
Yeah.
He couldn't find it. And that's when he was like, what the heck?
Yeah, so then he's like, okay, well, you have to show me a way out, and then pretty
not-
much, yeah, that doesn't go to plan.
Kind of works, but like not. Because Bilbo puts it on.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
Just
right.
like cuz, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and it ends up making him invisible.
Invisible.
And so Gollum thinks he escaped and starts thinking, oh, he probably does know the way out. And so it's like, oh,
Yeah,
perfect.
so he goes the way out because he thinks that Bilbo went
Yeah.
that way. And then Bilbo sneaks behind him, being
Mhm.
all invisible, trying to stay as far away as he
Yeah.
can while still following him. to like get the way out of there.
Yep.
All of us, yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
So he gets out. A little bit of shenanigans go on there.
Does that cool hero leap over Gollum.
Yeah.
To get
Even
to
though
get
I love that it
past
was
him.
like he almost crushed his head on the ceiling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't know that because it was dark, but he almost
That's
did.
what's fun about the narrator too. Like the
Yeah.
narrator's like, "Hey, did you know he almost crushed his head?" And it's like, "Now I do." But little things happen. Like, doesn't he encounter the goblin army? But again, he's invisible, so
Yes.
it's like he sneaks
Mhm.
through, but they get freaked out. And basically, he teams back up with the dwarves. But the dwarves were like, he probably bailed, like not being nice to him at all. So he like came up and he's like, "No, I'm here." Like,
he
you
kind of
little
does like a little
sneakies.
sneak, and then he's like, "Hey guys," and they're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, how did you do that?" And he doesn't
He
tell them
doesn't
about the
answer.
ring at first, that it goes like invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he tells the story of how he got like past Gollum and the goblins, and they're super impressed because they're like, "How did you do that? How did you sneak past everybody?"
I'm just special like that.
I'm
Yeah.
just sneaky.
He's like, "I'm just good like that."
I'm not wearing an evil ring that makes me invisible and like is
Yeah.
all powerful. I'm just cool.
So then they're like, "Okay, yay, we got you. We're all together again."
Yeah. So that's one of the big like points that I think the goblin and then Gollum definitely got to learn about that, and the ring obviously, which Marina is so nicely wearing around her neck.
yeah,
A nod to
our
Frodo.
fake ring,
Yeah.
but it's good.
We need to get rings made
Yeah, we should.
and turn evil slowly over time and become the men that serve
The ring rings.
Saruman. Yeah.
Nice.
Anyways, now to get into Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, different book.
So their next big adventure is kind of a happy one. I feel like they go happy, scary.
Yeah, it's
they
kind of a
meet
balance.
like a bear morphing man,
Yeah,
and he
he's
gives
like
them.
a shapeshifter.
Is he a
guy.
bear or like a wolf?
Hold on, now I'm thinking that we might have missed a step because there's the whole thing where the goblins chase him up the trees. That happens before they meet.
That's in
The bear.
between this.
That's
So-
that's after.
So right,
Are you
that's
sure?
right here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
right
I
after
just skipped
this.
it
Okay.
because I forgot. But
Oh.
basically, that's
Yeah.
what happens.
Oh,
is
you're right. It's right
The
before
Eagles.
Right
this. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they get out of the goblin thing and they chase him. They follow
Mm-hmm.
them and they catch them, but they're in the trees. Eagles come and pick them up because there's another race of eagles.
Gandalf
who are-
is here now.
Yes.
Gandalf was here in the goblin place. He's
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
up, surprised them, killed a bunch of goblins. So that's how the dwarves got out. We just kind of
Yeah.
skipped that.
When Bilbo like meets back up with
So
them.
they're all together. Gandalf kind of like does some sneaky stuff, right? And that's how the eagles know, like,
Yeah,
Yes.
so they're getting attacked by wolves, and then
So Gandalf like sets things on
which
fire.
they have
'cause
like
the
a different
wolves-
name, like
Yeah.
Wargs.
Wargs,
That's
yeah,
what they're called.
because they're like evil wolves. But yeah, so Gandalf is like using some fireworks to throw at them, kind of.
that's something I always found hilarious. It's like so many things have different names, but like fireworks are fireworks.
Fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always found that interesting because I'm like, why are fireworks in here?
Yeah,
And, like,
so
such
he
a
kind
thing.
of is scaring them off. Things are on fire, and then the eagles come.
come and save them,
Yeah,
which I feel like is something that we've always in my family been like, the eagles could just like do everything. It's another
Yeah,
like
I think
Gandalf
that's one of
situation.
those like funny things that fans like to say, right? They're
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the Eagles could have just literally stopped this, and they just
Yeah.
chose not
Not
to.
to.
I think the only like explanation they kind of had was like hobbits are so unimportant in Lord of the Rings, not to
Mhm.
Hobbit, but in Lord of the Rings, hobbits are so unimportant to like Sauron that he wouldn't be paying as much attention, right? Where like if an eagle was flying, everyone would be like, "What's the eagle doing?" Because they're
Yeah.
like big fucking eagles. They're not like
Yeah, they're
regular
not
eagles.
like
They're
just
huge,
the ones we
yeah.
have. They're
yeah, they're
they
like
can lift up
giant
people
They're
and
People, yeah.
hobbits,
by
and
one claw,
wizards.
Like, just chill. So that I feel like is like not the cop out because I don't want to say that about Tolkien because maybe like he did think that through, but like that is kind of the reason. But you do watch or read and you're like, okay, but the Eagles could save them here. The Eagles could save them here. Gandalf could save them here. Gandalf could save them there. So
Yeah.
it's just the. But yeah, so we kind of I brushed over that, but that was it really.
Yeah, and so then
They go to the bear guy's house,
yes,
Yes.
and I don't know why I'm even bringing this one up because I feel like there's not that much to it. We just meet another like guy. I mean, there's background meaning.
there's
to
more
it,
comedy
but
in this scene too.
There is.
Yes.
There's a lot of comedy in this book, honestly.
And how did we say that his name was pronounced?
Beorn,
Beorn.
Beorn. Yeah.
Beorn. Yeah, it's not Bjorn.
not Bjorn,
But a lot of people call him that, so
not
it's fine.
baby Bjorn.
But yeah, so they go, and the comedy of it is that Gandalf kind of tells all the dwarves to come in like 2 at a time
Yeah,
to like introduce themselves because he doesn't want to like upset him, and he wants to like make him
more like
believe his
agitated
story.
than just like.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
because he wanted to draw him into the story,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
as
Like, oh,
they
you don't wanna
are
hear
telling the
this.
story, or as Gandalf's telling the story to Beorn, then the dwarves keep interrupting, And then he's like, okay, like tell me the rest of the story
Yeah.
and whatever. And so then they kind of get some information from him afterwards.
Gandalf is honestly hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially when he's like frustrated too, because sometimes he's just like pissed off and he's like, I don't know the answer right now. And it's like, oh, sorry. But he's
so
funny.
he kind of tells him that like about their journey so far, where they need to go, and then they get some advice from him regarding the forest that they're about
Mirkwood.
Yeah.
Mirkwood.
Sounds
to go through
evil.
forever.
Which is funny because like in my mind that would also be a good place to be called the Wild, because it's wild and bad, but like there's already the Wilds.
Yeah.
So it has a different creepier name.
And then he warns them of this river that if you touch it or drink from it, you like
Fall asleep. Not good.
And you have some crazy dreams apparently.
So they go in there anyways.
Right,
With
because
his
they
help,
have to.
though.
One of the big warnings he and Gandalf also give them is to stay on the forest path, because
yeah.
if you miss it, you're probably not going to find it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also where Gandalf pieces out.
Yeah,
Yes.
he leaves again. He's like, by the way, I'm gonna meet you guys when you're out of the forest. That's not for me, bye.
Yeah. Because I guess
have-
the way he can go, they can't, / he has other tasks.
Yes, he had important business to attend to, which we learn a little about what that is later, but
And like not in Lord of the Rings or in The Hobbit, it's in like other work by Tolkien.
it is mentioned in like a one-line thing in the last
Yeah.
chapter. Like Gandalf's
Well-
like, oh, I was doing this.
Well, it's mentioned too after the trolls, because
Mhm.
they talk about the necromancer.
yes.
And he said, well, I was going ahead, checking out this. And even at some point, I think Thorin wants to go a certain path, and Gandalf's like, that's where the necromancer is. You
Yeah,
can't
we
go that
can't
path.
go there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of revealed that that's what he's doing. But yeah, he's just not there for like most of this part of the quest.
Yeah. So then in the forest,
Obviously, it should be clear what's going to happen next, since they said don't do it.
Yes, they stray from the path because
Yeah,
they
spoiler.
run out of food.
They get confused.
They get confused because they see elves.
Yeah.
Like,
that part was
having
so
a-
like
that
fever
part, the way
dreamish.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, the way it's written makes you confused
Yeah.
as well, which like that's really cool.
because you don't know if they're hallucinating
Yeah.
or if they're
Yeah,
actually
or like then they're like, oh, then we
is.
were like next to them, but then we weren't. And
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's not in the movie, which would have probably been interesting in the movie, because I remember reading it, I was like, where did these elves come from?
yeah,
But they were going crazy. And even when I reread it this time, I was like, when I got to the part with Elrond and they were all singing, I was like, is this the crazy elf part or is that later? So I had to like take a moment to be like, am I about to have a fever dream?
yeah.
But
Yeah, so they're kind of, I don't know, like trying to get up to them to
'Cause
kind of
they
beg
have
for
Yes.
food.
water.
Yeah, and then
Um,
the wood elves keep disappearing every time they get close.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And that
they're
kinda gets
desperately
them off the
trying to
path.
go and beg
And
for some
separates
food.
them.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's so dark
It's
once all
so
the lights
dark.
go away.
The way it's
yeah.
described is just like
Black.
you, literally Bilbo holds up his hand to his
Yeah.
face and,
And
he
you can't see anything.
Because like not only is it night,
They're
even when it's not
underneath,
like they're
like,
underneath
yeah.
like a canopy that's so tight and so evil that it's just
like they
darkness.
can't see the sun in there.
Which is kind of crazy to me that those elves live in there.
They just chill in there.
I know.
Because the elves seem like fine, like
They
they're,
seem to be thriving.
they're thriving in literally like the most dangerous thing,
Yeah.
but they're doing okay. But eventually, another big scene, I would say, they
Yeah.
get caught by some creatures.
Yeah, big spiders.
Big spiders.
Very big spiders.
Who can talk, apparently, which I didn't remember
Yeah.
until I read this, is that the spiders can
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
In the movie, you can't understand them until Bilbo puts the ring on, so it kind of shows like the ring
Oh.
has some power.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But yes, they can speak in the book. And this is actually why we mentioned the swords earlier, because
Mhm.
this is all the other times Bilbo was more being sneaky or more just hanging back. This time Bilbo actually steps up as a hero.
Yeah.
He does take charge. He does fight the spiders.
Yeah, because all the dwarves have been
The
kind of
dwarves
like
have been captured.
captured and
They're
then-
kind of mean to him as like, but they're the ones that get the most captured. Like he
I
didn't get captured by
know.
the trolls. He didn't get captured by the goblins. He didn't really get captured by the
yeah,
spiders.
they're like,
so like
"Ugh, you good for nothing Hobbit," and then they're the ones
as they're
that are like,
wrapped in like
they're like, okay,
silk.
but still save me though.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, so he kind of saves the day
Mhm.
from the spiders. Which,
And-
like, do the spiders, like, freak you out too? It freaked me out. I don't know. Reading about the spiders.
no,
Like,
but I don't have a
I'm
big
not,
spider fear.
no, I'm
Yeah.
not scared of spiders. I'm scared of the fact that they got wrapped up in, like, a spider's web.
Yeah, that is creepy.
Like, that's kind of creepy.
I
to me.
honestly think Gollum takes up so much of my brain that like
Ah.
nothing else upsets me.
I see.
Even though he doesn't upset me that much now, but even like looking at the Build-A-Bear of Gollum, I was like, I can
Oh,
never do
why
this.
would you want to own that?
No, I
That's
hated it.
horrible.
Oh my god, like Build-A-Bear
It
really
is a little
tried,
weird
but,
that
like,
they
I
did
couldn't.
that.
No, they shouldn't have.
He's not a fun, lovable mascot.
No,
I wouldn't.
No, remember, he's a little freak. Like we established earlier.
But this is a big scene because this is when Bilbo's sword gets a name, and it's
Mhm.
Sting, correct?
Yes.
Based off of the spiders.
Yes.
He's like, this is my
He's, like,
sting, he
stinging
says. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he's cutting.
Which is very important. And isn't that the sword in Lord of the Rings that
Yes,
Frodo uses?
he gives it to Frodo.
So that's very important too, because Frodo gets it. Is it after the first one? Or is it in the
No, he
beginning?
receives it in the first book.
Okay.
As
I can
well
remember
as
it was
with
the beginning or the end.
The mithril shirt he gives him, he also gets in this book too.
Interesting.
But
we're
unfortunately for them, after the spiders, they're not out of the woods just yet.
Oh,
good one.
Very funny.
So they get captured by the elves that they were trying
The
to
elves.
beg for food from.
Yep.
Where we meet Lee Pace. Just kidding. But not really. I love Lee Pace.
Yeah.
Have you seen what he looks like in that?
Like in Lord of the Rings?
In The Hobbit.
In The
He's not
Hobbit.
in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I mean, I told you I don't remember the first.
It's not. It's the second one. No,
Oh.
it's the second one, yeah.
I definitely haven't seen
You
that
should look
movie.
it up. He looks crazy.
Oh, interesting.
Lee Pace, sorry for anyone listening if you haven't seen the movies, he plays the leader king of like these elves.
Oh, okay.
In the movies he's Orlando Bloom's father. Anyways.
Yes,
Ah,
because
got you.
Legolas is in this.
Wait, why did I
scene in the
confuse him
movie
with
for some
Orlando
reason?
Bloom in my head for
No,
a second?
you're probably like, why is Lee Pace playing a young Orlando Bloom?
Yeah. Okay, I got confused. I can never
No,
remember.
he's Orlando Bloom's father.
Ah, I see.
I am your father. No. So they get captured by the elves, like you said. They get put in the elf version of jail.
Which
Which
again, Bilbo is sneaky.
yeah,
Yes,
Bilbo's
because
on
he
his
does
ring.
not get captured.
So that's like
because
the,
he
what,
put
the
ring
fourth
on.
time now
Yes.
that he doesn't get captured?
Yeah.
So he spends some time actually like sneaking around the
He's learning.
elf compound. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually finds out where Thorin is being held because he was captured slightly previously before all
Right,
the other
because he
ones.
got separated.
He got separated from them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And lets all the doors know, hey, I found him, and oh,
Yeah, so he's going around to all the different cells where they're being held prisoner.
Which they're kind of nice cells, right?
Yeah,
It makes
so
me
like
think of-
it's really funny because the elves are described as like, yeah, they'll like capture you and stuff, but they're still very polite. So then when they're trying to question Thorin, like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going? Like, why are you here? He kind of tells them like half truths and they kind of notice. And then
Yeah.
they're like, okay, well, you're not telling us the truth, so we're not going to talk to you
Jail.
anymore. But here's some food.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail.
Don't tell the truth, straight to jail. Ironic, I just brought up a Parks and Rec thing because I was about to be like, the jail reminds me of the Eagleton jail.
Oh,
in Parks and Rec,
yeah,
where it's
where
like,
it's nice.
The room's lavender, it's my color. And like they get like scones for breakfast.
Yeah.
So, it's the way
So they
to do
treat
it.
them nicely, but they are still prisoner.
And they need to get to the mountain.
Yeah, and they're all separated also.
Mm-hmm.
So Bilbo's kind of sneaking around. He's getting the lay of the land, trying to figure out maybe a way for them to get out of there. And he kind of is saying like he doesn't think that's going to happen. And honestly, it happens again by coincidence.
Yeah.
yes.
This whole book is like coincidence.
Yes, which is like classic hero's journey as well.
Yeah.
Notices a way out that what the elves are, I think it's when
Partying.
they're done with their stores of food or their wine, they'll dump the barrels into
Yeah.
a river that leads out
Yeah.
from their compound so that the lake people then can get it and refill it and send it back up to them.
And the guys guarding were kind of like,
They're not
"Yikes."
on their job.
No, they were like, let's try some of this good wine before it goes to the
Yeah.
king. And then they like immediately fall asleep.
Yeah, so like I think it was described as like the king's butler and then the head guard get drunk off their ass and fall asleep.
Yeah.
So Bilbo takes the keys, gets all the doors out. He's like, "All right, everybody, we're gonna get in these barrels and we're gonna jump in the river."
Yeah.
Which I stand by the fact that if The Hobbit was owned by somebody who had theme parks, this would be a good water ride
Yeah.
when they fall into the barrels.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And like, I feel like some of the rides already are like that. Like at Universal, you're in a big barrel and you're going
Yeah,
down.
it would just be a great log flume ride.
Yeah,
Yes,
like
absolutely.
so somebody buy that and make that, please.
Yeah.
And have like goblins fake throwing stuff at you, because
That'd
that's
be great.
Like I can't remember for sure. Like this is where my brain gets foggy. But in the movie, like that's a whole scene where the goblins catch up to them and the orcs catch up to them.
Yeah.
And they're like throwing.
There is
crap
no
at them.
goblins in the book
Yeah.
at this part
Yeah.
of the river. Yeah,
See this
but,
part? That's what I thought, but I
Oh,
had
so
to
goblins
confirm.
just continue.
But if you are making a
orcs.
ride, you probably base it off the movie.
You base it off the
anyway.
movie.
Yeah.
These, you'd have a fake Lee Pace, like get out of my.
No, pretty much their thing is just like, are we gonna drown? No.
Yes, that's
Well,
the whole
yeah,
time.
no,
It's
see-
just Bilbo worrying whether.
And this is another time that's kind of funny with the narration because they're like,
So
oh,
funny.
you might have figured this out already, but there's a flaw in Bilbo's plan. And I was like, I have not figured it out. Can you please tell me?
is that Bilbo does
I
not
need to
prepare
know.
a barrel for himself.
Oh,
Yeah.
poor Bilbo. I need to know if like Tolkien was doing that to be funny, or if he like that was just a thing, like that he thought the British would understand this in the 30s.
Yeah, so it was just funny. And so he has to kind of jump on top of a barrel because also he's like, you know, still invincible.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't pack himself into a barrel that's gonna get pushed in, so he just had to like jump on one. And then he's kind of scrambling. It made me think of like hamsters on a hamster wheel.
Yes,
So
yeah.
sad.
Yeah, that's the way it's described. But then he's able to, like, because he gets like close to the bank, he can kind of like put himself on top of a barrel using another barrel. So then he kind of has a better grip. But it's a little precarious.
Aww.
So they all
Silly.
continue on, and then eventually he's able to get to like the shore, and they've gone down the river.
They get to a barge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where there is a man named Bard, which always drives me insane. Is he called Bard in the books? I'm so sorry.
It
Okay.
is.
I'm like getting paranoid now.
I don't know if he shows up on the barge to
promise I
begin
will.
with.
Yeah,
I think he comes
doesn't.
in later.
He
The
comes
bargeman
in.
is someone different.
I was crazy. I'm gonna stop.
The guy running the barge is just some guy, and
Yeah,
then an
just a
elf
guy.
that represents
That's
the
right.
wood elves, and they
Mhm.
gather all the
Aw.
barrels, and that's what takes them to Lake Town.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's funny because then they're
So I couldn't remember if that guy ended up being Bard or not. I hate myself.
yeah, it's just like when it's describing them like being in the barrels and like being all like beat up.
And waterlogged and everything.
Yeah, it was just so sad. One of them
babies.
has like the smell of apples, and they're like, "I'm never gonna eat an
An
apple
apple
again."
again.
Poor kings under the mountain just have to smell apples.
Yeah, but yeah, so they do get out of their little containers, and like we
eventually.
said, their now next location that we're coming to is Lake Town, which is run by people.
Who were
Yes.
from Dale, correct?
Yes, they're the descendants
The
of
Dale
people from Dale.
survivors.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if
And
you
now
remember,
they live like on a town that's literally on the lake.
it's
Mhm.
Venice. Just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah,
they-
it's kind of like described as like jutting out over the
Mhm.
yeah.
the lake.
So they're there. More stuff goes down. That's when we meet Bard.
I don't think we even meet him until
No, he is mentioned at this point,
Yeah, I thought he was
but
mentioned.
just by a name.
Yeah.
Like he's not
he's not like
explained about
Introduced.
everything
Why
until
do I
way
like,
later.
Why am I thinking of
Because
Bard so much?
In the movie, they do try to shove him in a
know.
bunch. To be like,
I feel like
they wanted to make him a
my
hero
brain needs
character
to
so
separate
bad.
it better, but
Yeah.
like my mind's like, there was a guy pushing the barge, so it's Bard. Because there are so many
Bard on the
subtleties
barge.
in this. Well, that's what bothered me so much, because I'm like, the name's too similar. But there are so many things in the book that are subtly mentioned, which will describe like one of the end things that happens. It's so subtle that you could miss it. So my mind's like, did it happen? So anyways, just ignore me for now.
But anyways, so they're at the town.
Lake Town.
Yes, and they kind of tell them about like
Yeah, they kind of
their
flaunt their status as like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm the descendant of the king under the mountain, and then people are like,
Yeah.
ooh.
yeah,
Because they were the
which is
people who
kind of
did
funny.
understand that. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like we said that to, like, the Hobbits. They're like, what the fuck is
Yeah,
that?
we don't care.
Where
but-
Dale/Lake Town is like, yes.
Yeah.
These are our
So
people.
then they're like, oh yeah, awesome, let's like celebrate, and
Yeah.
then they kind of like have a party for
They honestly
multiple
got a
days.
lot of celebrations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually did, yeah. So they kind of just like they get to like rest and like eat.
Yeah.
and they're very excited about eating, like we've said.
As they do.
Bilbo mentions how hungry he is
A lot.
Every now and then he's
Bilbo.
just like, I wish I was in my Hobbit hole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
something
they're like,
that-
and it's not the last.
Yeah,
time
it's not
he
the
does
last time
that.
he'll say that. Tolkien points
Yeah.
that out a lot. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah, same Bilbo. Every time I go out and I'm like, I wish I stayed home.
Literally me right now, like, how long will it take me to go home and eat something?
Yeah.
So eventually they leave the lake town.
Yes. After
Yes.
partying for a while.
After partying, after meeting the king, who's Icky, the king of the lake town, so I don't know how much that'd be a king, but you know.
I think they just call him the master of the
Yeah, they call
town
him
because
master.
how little importance he is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
which
not
is
even
pretty
called
funny.
the king in the movie. I don't know why my brain did that. I'm just like,
Well, I
leaders-
mean, yeah.
leader, king, master.
Yeah.
Not really that important. He thinks he's important. But
Yeah, he thinks he's
He's
important.
he thinks he's
but
like the most powerful person
Nobody
in the
else
world.
thinks he is, really.
in all of Middle Earth.
Yeah, so this is kind of like the last leg of their actual like journey.
This is where it
journey
gets
part.
real.
Yeah, so then they arrive like out of the forest. Well, like out of the
Yeah, yeah.
I know what you mean.
yes,
they're
sorry.
on.
Out of they kind of see the mountain. Like
Yes.
it's finally there. They
And it's like,
finally
holy.
can get there. And so this is when they go and search for the door
Mm-hmm.
that we were talking about. in the beginning. And so,
And is marked on our beautiful maps behind us with the red if you're watching.
yes, which is not marked in the
The
books.
book.
Yes, that's something I wanted to mention. I'm so mad at the publishers that it's literally written there. Marked in red in the map in front is the entrance to the door, and it's not there. So Penguin
marked.
Random House / Del Rey, what are you doing? That's why you need to hire me, and I will
And
fix
you
it.
will print stuff with
I
red
will
ink.
print red ink on
I think
everything.
the symbol is there. It's
The
just in
symbol's
black
there.
and white. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but
It should be
I
in
mean,
red.
to me, I didn't understand when it's.
This is the freaking
symbol was
Hobbit.
there.
Like, just let this book have some red. I think you can afford it.
Yeah, but anyway, so it's marked there, and they're trying to find the secret door.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which is a big struggle.
Yes.
And
Not
there's
easy.
gonna be a bird knocking on it, which I love that bird. He's cool. He talks too.
Yes, which
So-
like
Not
all
to
the
them,
animals
but, like-
talk.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, so they kind of. That's when they're talking to the bird, and they're like, "Dang, I don't speak this bird language.
Well,
What
no,
is that bird
that
called?"
happens
was
later.
later.
That happens
Oh.
later. They find the door by
You
chance.
be messing up, girl.
I know. I'm going ahead. I'm like, yeah, it's
You're
they're
too
already down in
excited.
the mountain.
That was what I was doing. I was like, Bard's here, and you're like,
No.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, that's
the
when
thrush
they
is
the
just
knock,
knocking. He's
Yes.
like,
and then
He's just
knock.
around.
and then they're like, "Oh,
I won't do it. I won't stress the people out by tapping on the microphone.
Oh yeah, that will sound awful.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
I
don't
was
do that.
about to do it. Won't do it to you guys. Don't worry. No. Yeah, so finally, after searching and searching and searching, a little keyhole appears, which Bilbo finds,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and they freak out. It was exciting.
Yes.
And they got the door open.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems so simple, but it was not.
Yeah. I mean, the way it's described too, we don't really see them doing the work of like searching and searching. It's just
It
like
takes them a long
they're-
time. Yeah.
have a little camp, and then there's also another little camp, and they pull themselves up, and they're staying by the mountain, and they're trying to figure stuff out.
Mhm.
And then Bilbo's describing himself like, "My job is to sit here," and then he does that, and then they get mad at him for it.
Yeah, literally Bilbo does all the most important stuff, and yet they're so mean to him.
They're so mean to himself.
And again, it's just like a coincidence that they're able to find.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
they happen to be there on the right day and the right moon, and
Yep.
yeah.
with the bird tapping, and
Yes.
so
And that's okay.
it's
So
fated.
So right after this is when we get to like meet another character we've talked about a little bit.
Dun dun dun.
Smaug.
Smaug, Benedict Cumberbatch.
The big
Yes.
bad dragon.
Yeah. Which
the
I
dragon.
did not remember him not being so
Important.
relevant, I guess.
Yeah, he's not in that much, honestly.
I totally forgot that he's, I don't even know
Like
like
a
how many
chapter.
pages he's on, like literally a chapter.
Yeah, he is another important obstacle, similar to like the spiders and the goblins
Mhm.
of the mountains was. It's the films that really tried to blow him up into
Yeah.
like, wow, this is our Sauron of these movies.
Which is
but
Yeah.
funny,
it's
because,
just
like,
not what he is.
even in the film, like, he's not in that much, but the film is named after him.
Yeah. I think it's just because they really wanted to showcase Benedict Cumberbatch.
They
Yeah,
really
they
wanted
spent
to
so much
market
money on that
a
CGI.
dragon because
Yeah.
they're like, wow, people love dragons. Dragons are scary.
true.
They're
And I
People
guess
love
it
dragons.
is
I
on the
love
map.
dragons.
I
Yeah.
feel like he is, like, background important. It's just not, like, actually there a lot.
Yeah.
So they
So
hype that up.
again, that's when Bilbo mentions like, "Hey, we didn't really think about this part, guys.
We got a fourth guest.
Oh,
We have a dog here."
buddy.
He wants to talk about Smaug.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he doesn't make any sound to the microphone, so
No,
sorry for
his
literally all
sniffing
the
would
audio
be-
listeners.
Should we just fake
But-
sniff the microphone?
no,
Then
that's a horrible idea.
Can you even see him right now? Because he's behind Marina.
and so
Marina had a
then
little-
going back to
Marina's
the
like,
actual
shut
show.
the fuck up. Sorry.
I don't even remember where I was now.
Smaug. They go to meet
Bilbo,
Smaug.
Oh, okay.
Bilbo sneaks in.
Yeah, so Bilbo sneaks in and he's kind of getting like, I don't know, like he's trying to figure out like what's going on in there.
Yeah.
He sees Smaug and then he's like, "I'm invisible, so let me take
Yeah.
this little cup that he gets the treasure," and then he sneaks it back out to them, and then they all freak out. They're like, "Yay, this is
There
awesome."
gold.
And then this is when Smaug realizes,
Somebody took my gold.
yeah. And then that's when it kind of gives that little description of like the wealthy won't even notice what they have until like somebody
Until
tries
someone
to take
tries
it.
to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. I also was a big fan of, like, I don't know why I was a big fan of this, but it's interesting to me how long it took them to also then do that. Like, they kept going back and forth and back and forth. Like, Bilbo would go, like, a step further. It reminds me of my pet bunny, like Mr. Nibbles. If Marina's seen him, like, he'll go and inspect something, and then he comes back to me, and then he inspects a little further. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
that's what that reminded me of, because it was just so long that it took him to really even get to the gold and, like, to do things in there.
Yeah.
So, that was
And
interesting.
so then the dwarves are celebrating about the gold, and then that's when we get the thing of they're like, okay,
They kinda wake
so
him up.
now what though?
Yeah.
And then Bilbo's like, okay, well, literally I can sneak out like one piece of treasure at a time. I don't know what you guys want from me. And they're like, okay, well, this is all your fault now. Like, why'd you wake up the dragon?
Yeah.
Now we're like gonna die.
And he's like, this is what I've been saying the whole time.
And then again, they're horses. We don't really talk about the horses, but every
They
horse
lose
they
their
come
horse
into
a lot.
contact with, oof
Yeah.
on those horses.
Poor horses.
And the pony. Aw.
Aw.
But so they lose the horses again because the rope gets singed, and then they run away. And then Smaug's like, here's a snack. So then he like chases after them to eat.
Yes, because once he realizes the cup is gone, Smaug starts investigating around the mountain to be like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
someone's stealing from me, so there must be people out here.
Yeah, and he knows that they couldn't
Yeah,
have
he
gone
goes
far.
out, yeah.
Yeah.
He just can't find the door and the entrance to
Yeah,
that
because
because he
it's
doesn't know about
secret.
it. Yeah.
He went in through the front door, which also was funny to me. There was like, when he first invaded, he just slithered right in. And
Yeah,
it's
he
like,
Yeah.
walked to the big front door.
I
Which
know,
is
and
a
I was
massive
like,
front
how
door.
big is that front door that you guys
Massive.
were
Yeah, they
asking
just-
for the dragon to
Dude,
come
they
in?
describe it as like a big ass opening in the cave.
Yeah, in the cave.
Yeah.
Which
Or-
like makes
or in the
sense because I mean it's a mountain.
But
Yeah.
he just like goes on in.
Yeah.
But the fact that he can even make it in like the halls and stuff too, like
I
that's
know, it's so weird,
massive.
yeah.
But whatever.
Spatially in my head, I'm thinking of like what is it, like the Matterhorn at like Disney? You know, it's just an empty mountain.
Mhm.
That's how I'm thinking about it in my head. And
Yeah.
then Smaug's just in the middle. And then
That's
there's like
funny.
a staircase around with some little rooms.
Aw.
But yeah, spatially it doesn't click in my brain that well, obviously, but yeah. But anyways, it's fine. There's a big giant entrance, but obviously they knew not to go in that way
Mhm.
because they'll get killed immediately.
But eventually, fast forwarding through a bunch of sneaking around and trying to steal gold and Smaug searching, he does eventually meet Bilbo.
Yes,
Yeah.
they come not face to face because Bilbo's invisible, at the time.
Bilbo's using
Voice to
But
voice.
Smaug knows he's there.
Yeah, he can
Yeah.
smell him, he can sense him, he can
Yeah.
has all those other things. Because even Gollum could like tell where Bilbo was. from
Yeah.
smell,
And
so
the
it's
funny
not
thing
like-
is that like Smaug is like, oh, I know that there's dwarves because I can smell them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, because he can't smell a hobbit. Like, he doesn't specifically know
He
that
has
Bilbo
what
is a
the
hobbit.
smell.
Yeah.
He just knows that he's with dwarves because he can smell
Yeah.
the dwarves on Bilbo.
Also, I know Maria's gonna kill me. If you hear our fourth guest barking, I'm so sorry. But I know on the video you can, and it's gonna drive me nuts if I don't apologize.
yeah.
But anyways, so we meet, oh my god, we meet Smaug and, we don't meet Smaug. Smaug and Bilbo do their riddles. Not really riddles, but
No,
do
they just
their,
talk
like,
to each other,
talking.
and they kind of talk to each other in a way that's like Bilbo knew to still
That's
be
what I mean,
polite
yeah.
to a dragon, and
Yeah.
Which is
whatever.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's like, wow, there's etiquette for literally everybody, and how do you know all of that?
How do you know to be nice to a
And he
dragon?
doesn't give away who he is because he
No.
knows that's probably a really bad idea. But
Yeah.
he does like give some titles that he's like, oh, you could call me this, you can call me that. And
Yeah, he says like
Barrel
Rider of
Rider.
Barrels.
Barrel Rider, which puts into Smaug's head that he's from
He's
Lake
important.
Town.
Yeah,
Which is a bad idea.
Yes.
yeah, and then Bilbo's like, dang, I was trying to be sneaky about it, but I think I gave him a little bit of info.
Yeah, because... Go ahead.
This is also when Bilbo notices a very key weakness in Smaug's armor is that part of his underbelly is not protected by scales or jewels, and it's like a very small spot.
Yeah.
And he goes back and
Yeah.
tells the dwarves about it, I believe.
The weak
when he
point
gets
that you
out.
hit.
Yeah.
So they all know, like, okay, if we gotta kill this guy, this is where
That's
it's
the
gotta
only way we
happen.
can make it happen, yeah.
More importantly, the dwarves hear it, but the thrush that's nearby hears it as
Yes.
well, which
Yeah,
comes
So
back
the thrush
soon.
tells.
Yeah.
Who are the birdies?
The
that
bird,
I was trying to
yes.
talk about earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, wait, no, not yet.
Lots of birds.
Yes. So they pass, yeah.
Mhm.
They're able to talk about that. So once Smaug like leaves
Mm-hmm.
and they're going in the mountain to investigate like the dwarves and Bilbo, and they're like, okay, well, we got to be like quick and careful because Smaug can come back at any moment. And then after a while, they're kind of just like, oh, that's weird. He's like nowhere to be found. I don't know why. And we kind of like get to the end of their chapter when they're looking around, and then they come up to like the front entrance, and then we find out in the next chapter that it's because Smaug has been defeated, but not by our heroes, by
No.
someone else that we might have brought up
A
already.
lot of times already.
Yeah.
Yes. Smaug goes to wreak vengeance on Lake Town because he believes Bilbo's from there, or at the very least got help from there.
Right, because of the barrel thing.
So he starts like destroying a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But luckily, as you had mentioned before, a guy named Bard is there who was a descendant of the rulers of Dale, I believe.
Yeah.
So he could understand the thrush who comes and
Yes.
starts talking and be like, hey,
And they're like, hey, weakness.
Dragon's coming. Watch out.
Yeah.
So he
And
prepares.
so they are pretty well prepared, and
Yes,
that's why they
they
live
are.
over like the like lake. So then they have like all this stuff ready
They
to like
learned.
be ready and
instincts.
put all the fires out and whatever. But obviously he's still destroying things. He's like
Mhm.
a giant dragon, and he's like
Just
hit his
fire.
tail onto stuff and like destroyed some buildings.
Which there is current media that is like copying that directly, which I don't want to call it out in case people haven't seen it yet, but
Well,
a lot
now
of
you have to say what it is
I don't
because I don't
have
know
to
what the heck
remember.
you're talking
but
about.
then I'm gonna ruin something for you.
Just say it.
Spoiler alert, in Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
that happens
Oh, with dragons.
directly. Like I was telling them earlier, J.R.R. Martin basically copies everything Tolkien does, including putting R.R. in his name.
Yeah.
So when watching / reading Hobbit after watching Game of Thrones, it was like, see where you got that scene from. But
Yeah. So just directly.
everything is like directly taken. And now I remember when I was like reading it, I was like, didn't I just watch this on TV? So
And you're like, yeah, I did. But yeah,
Big
so he's
influencer.
destroying things, and then they kind of are like, oh no, we're like shooting our last arrows. There's no hope. And then
Yeah.
Bard is like, this is my last arrow. And then he gets the message of like, there's the weak spot on the dragon. And then, of course, he hits him right there because this is the guy who's our random hero who we hadn't met really.
yeah. I get why the movies wanted to like
Build them
Yeah.
up more. Yeah.
Because in the book, it is kind of just like, this guy.
Yeah.
He did
Imagine
it.
watching like a huge blockbuster and a random guy just like shoots an arrow and you're like, okay.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's fine. Yeah, so then Smaug crashes down
Yeah.
and he's dead.
Yep.
That's it.
Sinks to the bottom of the lake, and that's the end of him.
Yeah.
And that's the entire second movie. Not really, but that's the name of it.
Oh,
For
no.
just that little 5 minutes,
Yeah,
one chapter.
that sucks.
And the dwarves aren't even a part of it in the book at all. They're just chilling.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't he also, Bilbo finds a special stone
Yes.
by happenstance?
He finds the Arkenstone, which is
which
something.
he doesn't even know.
Yeah, that Thorin had described as like, oh, this is the most precious jewel under the mountain. They call it
So,
the heart of the mountain.
I don't know
Yeah.
if didn't he not explain that yet? Because I
He
remember.
No, he did, because that's
He
why
did.
Bilbo knows
But
what it
did
is.
Bilbo know that when he first grabbed it?
Yes,
Mhm.
he figures, well, this is probably the stone he's
Yeah,
describing.
he doesn't know, like,
because-
100%, but
Because
he's
in my
pretty
mind,
sure.
I thought he was like, because I remember after reading it, I was like, oh, so the Arkenstone wasn't even nearly as hyped up. Because in the movies, it's hyped up. It's basically like,
They mention it in the
Okay.
book. Like, he describes it before, and Bilbo's like, oh, this must have been what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
because there's
and then
probably
he just
nothing that
snaps
looks more pretty than this.
yeah,
So he's
but
like,
it definitely was.
"Take."
I can assure you.
And I think it's really funny that
super hyped
Bilbo's
up.
thought is then like, oh, well, I hope that this is the thing that I get to keep.
Yes,
Yeah.
When he's
at
figuring
first,
it
when he
out.
first picks it
Yeah,
up,
you
that
can
is
keep
his
the most
thought.
important
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I want this one. This is my payment,
Me.
which is really funny.
But then I'm trying to remember though, there was something. Weren't they searching and Bilbo didn't even know what they were searching for, and then he says what it is?
No, he knows they're looking for it. He just doesn't want to
Okay.
tell them that he
Why
has
am I
it.
thinking? Maybe I read it wrong, but in my mind, I remember thinking it was like not as hyped up. Like it was, but like in the movies, it's literally like that's when he starts like hallucinating.
Oh,
There-
okay.
he's thinking
He's
about
has
it.
the gold, but he's pissed he doesn't have the Arkenstone yet, so he's
Mhm.
like going crazy, and Bilbo's just there like,
Yeah.
anyways. And he's even talking to Balin at some point in the movie where he's like, what if he does find it? And Balin's like, he would go crazier. So then Bilbo's like, okay, and just like keeps it because
Yeah.
he doesn't want him to go crazier.
But yeah, so he picks that up, and then sorry, I'm getting out of order
We're-
now that I'm looking at it.
All over the place.
Okay, so Smaug is dead. They're like, what happened to the dragon? And then we see him sink to the bottom of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's pretty much everything that just happens with the dragon.
Yeah.
And then we kind of move on to like the final act,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is apparently, you told me, the entirety of like a
The
2.5 hour
entirety
movie
of
plot.
this third movie, which I not.
And it's like the last like 3-ish chapters of the
3 or
book.
4 chapters of the book.
And it's
Yeah.
a whole ass movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like maybe like
I think they
50
have a lot of like the
pages.
necromancer in this movie, and that's why. Like I think that there's like a big battle scene with the necromancer. there's more like there's a special orc, like that's why, but it is frustrating as hell.
Yeah. And
Not
so
fun.
then Lake Town kind of is like, they're pissed because they're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
the dragon
got
destroyed
destroyed for
everything
you.
because of
Yeah.
the dwarves that were here, and we just celebrated you guys. Like, what the heck? That's rude.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay, well, you know what? Now we want some treasure because you destroyed our
Which they
town.
deserve.
Yeah.
Honestly, I
Help
think
them.
it's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He makes good points when Bard's demanding a share of the treasure. He's like, hey, we helped you, we fed you,
Yeah.
and like our town got wrecked.
Continue helping
Yeah,
you.
and we
Yeah.
didn't say, but like
trade.
the master kind of fled in
Yes.
the boats, and then like everyone was like, okay, Bard should be the ruler because he's
Yeah.
the best. And yeah,
and
that's
like
kind of just
ascended
like
and stuff like that.
yeah.
But,
But,
yeah, Bard
yeah,
made
so-
some fair. I think Bard had the biggest claim,
Yeah.
like, of getting a piece. He wasn't even
Mhm.
asking for all of it. He's like, look, we just need to like heal our
Yeah, we need to
wounded
like
and sick
rebuild.
and like have a life.
Yeah. So
Well, we ask our government, and we don't
yeah.
get from our government.
The crumbs. May we please have some. But so then Thorin is kind of like, he's stubborn about
F
sharing.
no.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not
He's
giving any of my money.
Nah, this belongs to us. Like, don't you remember? Like, Smaug took it from us.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, well, don't you remember we're the descendants of Dale? So like,
Who also
also
had that
he
money?
took that from us
Because he like collected Dale's money after.
Yeah.
Like, put it in there.
And so then there's like the tension between them there.
So
And
that's
they
two
also,
armies.
yeah, so they also bring in the elves
Because
as
they're
well.
the people of the lake are friends with the wood elves.
Yeah,
And-
as we heard from their
Yeah.
little system with the barrels.
Yeah.
And the elves had heard Smaug is dead, and they had mentioned kind of like one off that, which very much unlike elves, that their king kind of has a thing for fun treasures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he sees an opportunity of like, well, if I go with the lake people and I help them, since we've already helped them so much, I could probably get a slice of their treasure.
Yeah. A dragon is, in people's mind, less scary to defeat than any army. So
Mhm.
now it's interesting.
So now it's kind of like open season, like everybody
Everyone
to
wants
go.
that
Yeah.
damn gold, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is basically the premise of the third movie.
So like Thorin, like Rena has mentioned, he's kind of going a bit greedy. He's also
Yeah.
going kind of gold crazy. He's like, I'm not giving any of this gold. I'm gonna call my cousin who lives up in the Iron Hills, and I'm gonna tell him to bring a whole bunch of dwarves, and we're gonna fight to guard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a whole battle starts seeming to about to erupt between like the lake town, the elves, and then the dwarves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then more show up.
And then more people show up.
People is a loose term for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
'Cause those are the three of the. Because this is the battle of the five armies
Yeah.
section, so that's
Yeah.
the
It was, like,
three of the
dwarves,
five, right?
The people, the elves. I think the other dwarves count as a
Count
different
as an
army.
No. I remember what it was now.
Okay.
'Cause
Oh, okay.
it's
here we
those
go.
three, like you said, and then the
Yes.
last two are the bad guys.
Yeah.
Who are,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you were
right.
going to mention
Yeah,
someone on their way.
They come
Yes.
up in a second, yeah. But this is like before that happens. That's when Bilbo kind of like says like, "Hey, I have this thing,
Yes.
the Arkenstone."
He gives it to the lake people because he's like, look,
Um,
you guys can then use it to barter with Thorin. Like, hey, we have this stone. We'll give
Yeah.
it back to you
mhm.
because it belongs to you. We just asked for that treasure we're owed
Yeah.
in
So
exchange.
pretty much, he's like, "Hey, here's this little bartering piece because I kind of don't want us to all fight and be crazy.
Mhm.
Like that
He
seems
cares
kinda
about
dumb.
the dwarves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't want dwarves to like get hurt
Yeah.
trying to do something stupid because they all care about each other now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time on this
Even
journey.
with Thorin going crazy, he still cares about him.
Yeah, and so also that's when Gandalf shows back
Yes,
up. He's like,
Gandalf's here
"Poof,
now."
I'm here again."
He's like, oh, good job, Bilbo. You stole that stone and you're giving it to them as a barter to avoid war. I'm proud of you.
Literally,
Yeah.
Gandalf could have like killed the dragon.
I know.
And it
Gandalf
Probably.
shows back up and he's like, "Good job for giving them this stone."
When you see the thing he fights in the Lord of the Rings movie or books later, it's very aggravating that he was not there to help fight the dragon.
Yeah, I was like, we
So
really
much
could have
worse.
used you. But yeah, so he has that, and then they do try and like barter, and he says that, like you just said, like, "Hey, we have this, we just want what we're owed." Thorin's like, "What the heck, Bilbo? How could you do this to me?"
Mm-hmm.
And so he's really angry at him. And
Yeah.
then we do get some bad guys.
Visitors.
Yeah.
Some goblins. Some goblins.
Goblins.
This is where they finally re-enter after so long.
Yes.
They
And
too
for
have like
fun.
heard the
Yeah.
Smaug is dead, and they're like, well, we're gonna go get that gold.
Yeah.
Because they're also mad that the dwarves and Gandalf killed the Goblin King earlier in the
Yeah.
story.
And like a shit ton of goblins.
Yeah.
And they've kind of always been fighters. Like they fought in like the Mines of Moria.
Mm-hmm.
They just like the dwarves and the goblins are kind of both underneath the mountain dwellers. So I feel like
Yeah.
they're always fighting over things like that, and mines and goblins just fight everyone in general too.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so
and
then
there's
we
a
have, yeah.
fifth one.
The fifth army is the wargs that work with the
Nice.
goblins, the big wolves, the evil, ugly wolves that they describe a lot,
Yeah.
who also apparently can talk. A lot of the animals
Yeah, they
in
talk.
Tolkien's work have their own
Everything can
languages and
talk.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
And-
cool.
Yeah,
And they're
so
working
that
with the
is all
goblins,
5
yeah.
of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they're like, oh shoot, there's these bad guys, so we can't fight each other. We gotta team up, guys.
Yeah.
Classic. Another staple of like a hero's journey. We gotta band together to defeat the big bad wolf. Yes, the big bad wolves.
In a sense, yes.
Yes. But yeah, so then this, in this fight, actually, Bilbo is not that much of a part of it.
Another comedy aspect of the
Yeah, which is kind of, really funny because it's like, this is the climax, here we go. And then it's like, bonk, again, Bilbo gets hit by a rock.
He gets hit by a rock. And,
Thrown by a goblin, yeah.
Yep, and gets knocked out.
And then, yeah, so he
just
gets knocked
wakes
out.
up afterwards.
And then we're like, okay, Bilbo's coming too, and this is everything that happened.
Which why he wrote it like that, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
funny.
It does make me think again, talking about how he wrote it for his kids, if he didn't want to be like, there was
Gory.
this bloody battle, and
Yeah.
then these
Like,
guys are getting
anyways.
stabbed. He's like, but we'll just like, write it in post. Like,
Yeah.
this is what happened.
Like, so they fought.
Yeah, it's pretty much like,
Go
here's
ahead.
what you missed on Glee, real quick.
Mhm.
Here's what you missed on. Please.
And then it's like, oh, also really sad, like, Thorin is dying, and then
Yeah.
Bilbo has to like say goodbye to him.
Very depressing, and I cry
And-
every time.
Thorin forgives him
Yes.
for the Arkenstone.
Arkenstone.
And so, they end on good terms. It's
It's sad.
very sad. Yeah.
And as we mentioned, 2 other important dwarves died, Fili and Kili,
Mm-hmm.
which those are the 3 descendants of the Doran line, which we
Yes.
didn't really talk about, but like that was
Yeah, we
did a
mentioned that
little,
he was like
he was the
descendant of
king,
Yeah.
and those were his like
Nephews, I believe.
nephews. So those 3 were kind of the most important to keep alive, is what they all felt like they were.
Yeah, they were like, well, as long as these guys make it, it's kind of fine if all of
Which
us
kind
don't.
of felt bittersweet, because I'm like, okay, you defeated the dragon, but like you're up in air, which is like they can rebuild obviously, but it just felt
Yeah.
weird because I'm like, your whole plan was to have one of these 3 rule,
Yeah.
and now all of
they're
them are
Yeah,
gone.
he-
That entire line is gone.
The cousin he called from the hills ends up becoming the king under the mountain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, which I guess is still good, but it was just very sad.
Yeah. And so that's like the end of the actual adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And as all good hero journeys do, they return to the original.
But
Yeah.
changed.
Yes,
Changed.
New
but
man.
changed.
New perspective.
And then they kind of say like
He
it's
was
been
dead.
like a whole so it's been
I
like a
love
whole
that.
year.
Yeah.
And so they come back, and then Bilbo's stuff is getting like sold
Auctioned
and
off.
auctioned.
It's so
By
funny.
his greedy relatives that don't like him.
Yeah,
By
and
other
then he's like,
baggins.
"Oh, hey guys, I'm alive." By
Yeah.
the way, and they kind of never respect him as like a respectable
No.
hobbit again because he's like been on this crazy adventure
Even though
and
he's
stuff.
like super rich now.
Yeah.
Yes, because he did get a share of the
Share of the
treasure,
treasure,
as well as
yeah.
like gold they hid from the trolls a while
Yeah.
back.
Mhm.
He went back and got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then pretty much he just has his own friends, and he's like, well, he didn't care because
Mhm.
cool elves visited him sometimes.
Yeah,
and
he's
Gandalf
even say
did.
he asked
Gandalf.
favors from elves and dwarves and Gandalf, and he's like, these people think I'm cool, so I
Yeah,
don't
he's
care.
like, so I don't care about these hobbits. And
Aw.
yeah, that's how Bilbo's journey ends. Well, for now.
For now. Yeah. Until his fun magic ring turns out to be evil.
Yeah, but we don't know that yet.
We don't know that yet. For another 20 years.
Years.
Yeah.
When
Quite the gap.
Tolkien decided to write it. Even
Yeah.
though in this it was like another 100 years or some crap. But
Yeah.
anyways.
But yeah, so that's pretty the plot, and we did go into like
We
it kind
did.
of deep, but
And
we,
we
did
did
talk about a lot of
the-
our things we
We were
wanted to.
jumping.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it's hard to mention those things and not then go, okay, well, this is what we think about it. So
Mhm.
it's all good.
Yeah. So I guess, was there anything specifically that you wanted to say, like symbolism wise?
There is, but I feel like, do we have anything else about like the hero's journey or like stuff we've talked about?
I would just say like this is a really good example of the
It
hero's
is.
journey. I know that they teach that pretty much in like 9th grade English, I want to
Yes,
say.
that's probably
And
the first
then
time you get
if
it.
like all 3 of us, you are an English major in college, you will learn about it again. I actually did a presentation on it because that was the term that I picked for one of my classes. So I did like a whole last presentation, and actually how there's like different developments in it now. There's actually like a
Mhm.
heroine's journey, which is different, and key differences. Anyways, pretty much the hero's journey is pretty outdated because it was pretty much just written for like white men.
Yeah.
So that's why there's different ones now, and you can look into that. It's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. But basically, hero's journey is like, you know, they go out and there's like a wise sage type person that kind of like guides them on their
Yeah.
journey. They change, they become brave,
They have specific
climax.
like events that happen. So
Yeah.
all those things we talked about.
and then after that, there's
They have a new
resolution, new
They've
perspective.
learned.
They return back to where they came from, but as a changed person.
Yeah.
And that's a brief hero's journey.
All I can think of is like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which I know is an epic more than a hero's journey, but like
Yeah.
that keeps playing in my mind. And I
Yeah.
think it's because of the Hobby Lobby thing that's going on.
Oh my god,
But
yeah.
I think that's also because I learned like epics more than I learned like the specific hero's journey, which
Mhm.
aren't the same but have a similar
They have a
feel.
similar cadence.
There's
to
a
them,
Venn
yeah.
diagram there.
Yeah, there's a Venn diagram. It's like an epic can have a hero's journey,
Yeah.
and does, but sometimes it has wiggle room.
Mhm.
So
But yeah, so this is a really good example of that. A lot of heroes' journeys are just very great reads. They're
They
very
are.
easy
And
to
you can-
follow.
I mean, they're built for white men, but like you can
Yeah.
use it for anyone, honestly. Like
Yeah.
but it is.
It's a good
to
format. Like I said, you learn about it anytime you
Yeah.
have any English classes.
Have.
But that's pretty much all for hero's journey that I wanted to
and
touch
that's
on,
what
I
we were.
guess.
All this is what we were saying about like if you read Percy Jackson first, then when you read this, you're like, oh, here's a more advanced version of the hero's journey.
Yeah,
with
so you
still
can
language
kind
we
of-
can
yeah.
understand.
Like a kid, there's like, I don't know, like children's versions
Yeah.
of that, and then you can like expand upon that.
I know we kind of touched on this, but like I think one of the common themes was like greed.
Mm-hmm.
Not one, like I think
That
Yes,
is, like,
yes,
yeah.
the gold
the
literally.
stone is literally a symbol of like greed. You were saying the gold.
The gold drives people to madness in quantities.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you literally said there's a quote that's like people don't realize the money they have until someone tries to take it, and then they're mad someone tries to take it.
Yeah, even if they
though
weren't using
they're
it.
so rich they can't even touch it.
Yeah.
So that's a common theme throughout this. A very like obvious, literally hoarding gold. So
Yeah.
a few things that I pulled from Spark Notes because sometimes they have not sometimes all the time.
Yeah,
have
Spark
very
Notes
good
is a great
points.
source, by the way. I
They-
think we've endorsed them many times.
They have a good point about the swords, and how swords can represent when you're becoming a hero. So that's why I wanted to touch on them. Like when they first find the swords under the troll's cave, I think Bilbo, Thorin, and Gandalf all get a sword, and right away Gandalf and Thorin's is already named, and that was kind of a symbol of like they are heroes or they've
Mhm.
decided they're heroes. Where Bilbo's doesn't get named until he names it while fighting the spiders, and that's also the first time Bilbo is actually stepping up and acting like a hero, in terms of like a hero's journey or like
Yeah.
epic. So that's really important to the story. I think that's super cool that I've never thought of before. That like
Yeah, I
isn't named
honestly
till
didn't
then.
think about that.
No,
either,
I didn't
which
at
is pretty
all.
cool.
And I think there was another, although it looks like they combined. Oh, Tolkien actually himself mentioned that the book is sort of like a reference between the old versus the new.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you mentioned something about like Lord of the Rings is even more of this.
Yes. Like Lord of the Rings goes pretty heavy in like a whole thing of like natural order versus like industrialization
Yeah.
and industrial order.
And it seems like natural seems better.
Yes, that is
Mhm.
definitely what is raised
Yeah.
up to be like the
Yeah.
good guys. You know, the hobbits live a very natural-esque lifestyle. In the Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings, the Ents are very natural creatures that live in the woods and among the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
The
bad
goblins
guys
are,
are
like,
the ones that
super,
are
like,
cutting
building
things
crap.
down, burning.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
like kind of goes into like what I was going to
happened
say
in The
regarding
Hobbit,
like the races of like
Yes.
everybody in like the Hobbit, like everybody
Yeah.
like you just said who are like nature and stuff, they're all just very good. Like they're not bad no
Yeah.
matter what. And then like goblins are always evil. Like
Yeah.
there's no moral gray area,
Which is also a
It's
common thing to happen in
like
epics and
in a
hero's
hero's
journeys.
journey. So there's very much just like it's black and white. You're good or
Yeah.
you're bad. You're a hero or you're a villain. There's not really
And then
any
there's
wiggle
a
room.
few.
Yeah.
But that's something that was going on with in The Hobbit. It happened in the sense of like Tolkien was representing the hobbits kind of like what he considered himself as like middle class English,
Mm-hmm.
where then there was upper class, which was kind of like the rest. So it was kind of a class like race going
Mhm.
on, to the extent that a man in England in 1930s can discuss.
Can understand.
Right, yeah.
So for that he did a good job, but yeah, you have to keep that in mind sometimes.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is sort of a silly thing, and Maria's gonna be like, God, why are you saying this? But Marina had a professor who talked about that Shrek was
Racist.
Shrek was kind of racist, Because you couldn't love. You can explain it better than me. Just like
it was just that like the fact that they had to be like the same race to like be in love, and then like get married. Instead of like the interracial couple.
But, like, damn.
But yeah.
So this is in the movie, not in the books, and this is a good segue to like cultural impact. In the movie, they gave Keely a love interest who was an elf. So I was joking with Marina, like, oh, so they did the opposite. They kind of showed like interracial is fine, which they did, because they actually did have topics of like that, where like just because he's a dwarf doesn't mean he's bad, and like so it was very in your face. But it made me think of her professor, like, oh, her professor probably likes this.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that he probably doesn't like it because it goes against everything in The Hobbit.
Right. You have to have a random shoehorned like romance in there.
I will discuss that more if we're gonna go into culture, but that was the rest of my symbols and themes.
Yeah. But I think I'm not sure if we usually say it now or before symbols, but I think we forgot to mention our favorite parts.
Our favorite parts. You guys go.
Alec, did you have a favorite part?
Oh,
it can be very vague. Sometimes we're like, we pretty much liked everything.
We like how the narrator talks like this.
I guess my favorite part would be when they're fighting, or like in the trees from the goblins, when they're like setting everything on fire. Just because I remember that being really tense when I read it as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like 11.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're like, how are they gonna get out of this?
Yeah.
I was gonna say probably my favorite part is when Bilbo is talking to Smaug, just because I think that's really funny and like witty,
clever, yeah.
And that again, that kind of showcases like some of the writing.
I feel like what I'm gonna say goes along with what you're saying, but dumber. Because like what I mentioned earlier, I liked Thorin falling because it shows like, okay, he's almighty, but like the book's silly and he's not God. Like he still falls, no matter how hard he tries. No matter how hard he tries to like speak perfectly, someone's interrupting him. And just like the comedic timing of the book itself, like it's an epic, but then like you're laughing like, oh my god. Yeah. So pretty good. The comedy, Thorin falling, stuff like that.
Okay.
It's nice, lighthearted.
So we do all have some different parts that we picked, which is nice.
Yeah. Time for the cultural impact, which is massive.
Yeah, so cultural impact, massive. Like
massive.
Spawned a trilogy after this, and then after that the movies became like international phenomenon, like
huge, yeah.
Yeah.
Breaking like barriers,
huge
and, like,
nerd culture.
Huge nerd culture.
There's like conventions and
they dress like we're dressed.
Yeah. Dress like hobbits,
cosplay.
Elves.
People that speak Elvish fluently.
Yeah, people literally learned like a fake language, which is insane.
There's not a lot of Elvish in this book, correct?
That's not.
It's in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But like that's the thing with like, that's why we mentioned Tolkien as a linguist. He literally he was one of like the first to really like
do that thing where you make a language.
At least in popular books that we know, like create a full language that's legit and follows linguistic rules, which now people do that, like Star Trek did it, Game of Thrones does it, so it's just like that was a big deal, and people learn it. And can people like get degrees in that, or is that like Star Trek?
I'm not sure. I know that some colleges definitely have things like that.
Definitely, at least the classes are there.
Yeah,
which is insane.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
like we said, it's just huge in like pop culture forever.
I was gonna say
it's one of those ones that won't die.
One of our like childhood movies or like teenage movies was 17 Again. And they wear elf ears and speak Elvish to each other. The principal and like the nerdy rich guy.
Yeah,
so
I remember
it
that.
Even, like seeps into like
to other movies,
the teenage rom-com.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know, like referenced on sitcoms
and Shrek, like you said, with the gold and the dragons.
Yeah, so it's made a huge impact on all media. And it's I don't know, huge success story, I guess.
Yeah, and a great story, truly.
Yeah,
the Hobbit.
We can understand like why it became that big.
The Lord of the Rings ended up being much, much bigger than The Hobbit. I feel like you know Lord of the Rings and then you kind of know The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Now it's more known,
which is why they made those movies first.
Yep.
And then they were like, well, maybe we should go back and do this other book.
Which, fun fact, that's also what happened with the Da Vinci Code. That was his second book, and Angels and Demons was his first book. But the Da Vinci Code
actually
exploded in popularity, so they just made that one, and then they decided to make Angels and Demons.
Interesting.
It confused me because I actually started to read the Da Vinci Code, and then it was like, oh, well, this thing I did in Rome last year, and I was like, hold up, pause. So, fun fact, they do that sometimes in media. Whatever's more popular, they'll make first, because they want to make money.
And then, like we were saying, we talked about the movies here and there, but there is 3 movies based off of this one book that is 300 pages long, I will say.
Yeah.
So imagine making a movie based on 100 pages of text.
Which has happened. I'm gonna be like the devil's advocate in this, but I will say that I know there's things wrong with these movies, but I like these movies. They're just bad. Not as bad as last episode, like with Percy Jackson, where like this sucks, but I watch it because I have to. Like, no, I like these, but there's things where when I'm watching, I'm like, stupid.
Yeah, like things that got changed for no reason. I think you were saying. Like I said, I only
adding
saw
the love
first
interest.
Hobbit movie.
Yeah, if you want to bring up that real quick, that's probably the biggest
so
point.
That's the thing that pisses me off the most, because I'm also very like, what's the point of having a love story if there? I think we all feel that way. Like, why add a romance if there's no need?
Exactly.
So like, why was a random elf girl added to fall in love with Keely?
What was the reason?
What was the reason? That's literally how I felt. Like, I think it's just to make you feel even sadder when Keely and Feely died, because it's like, oh, they have something, but
yeah. And it's like, okay, so their connection with Bilbo wasn't enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Has to be like a romance.
There's also
other relationships don't count as anything.
An orc leader who's like following them the whole 3 movies. Like, he's the main villain, and he's working for
which is like so
Sauron.
weird that they just add that. They're like, oh, but also this other evil thing.
And he's like kind of mentioned in the book. He has like one time he's mentioned, and it's just that he killed Thorin's grandfather, and that's it. I got a tickle in my throat. But yeah, there's other little things that are changed here and there too, but those two plot points are massive.
And I will say, because we didn't bring this up yet, but we talked about it a lot previous to the show, was that The Hobbit, a good thing, even if you hate the movies, I think a lot of people thought that it was cool that they kind of brought the Hobbit holes back. Like, the Shire was like dead and destroyed after the Lord of the Rings.
The legit ones in New Zealand.
They were just kind of left abandoned, which is like really interesting. If you're ever wanting to go down a rabbit hole, look up like abandoned movie sets, abandoned movie props.
They're crazy.
Super interesting. But they were pretty much just abandoned. They made them for the films. They never paid anyone to do any upkeep.
Yeah.
They were just overgrown, almost
and people
like
were going to visit them, but they were deteriorating.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then the Hobbit movies, when that happened, they went and they, revitalized.
Because it was Bilbo's home.
I think there's still like a
they're like, you can do
now.
guided tours now, and it's like a huge thing. I would love to go.
My like life goal is to go to New Zealand, and like not just because of the Hobbit, like it's mainly because New Zealand's one of the
really
prettiest.
pretty.
It's really because
it's so lush.
The Hobbit's filmed there because it's pretty.
Yeah.
So obviously you want to see it because it's pretty, but at the same time it's like, well, I love the Hobbit, and if they filmed in the prettiest places, why not do the Hobbit tour that's in like some of the prettiest places?
And then I know Alec brought up with us some of the things that weren't so good about the movies coming back to film in New Zealand, and
it was sad.
Do you want to like
one of the major impacts, I guess you could say as a cultural impact, that the Hobbit movie Hobbit trilogy had like on New Zealand and New Zealanders is when they were filming the movie, Warner Brothers for the Hobbit I should say, Warner Brothers threatened to move to a different filming location so they could get cheaper labor, and they ended up bullying the New Zealand government into accepting this thing that literally was called like the Hobbit Law.
Sad.
Where it was very anti-union, and they took a lot. Basically, they turned New Zealand film industry individuals into individual contractors under law. So they lost a lot of rights to things like sick pay, holiday pay, healthcare plans. Super shitty thing to do, and Warner Brothers basically had their government roll over. They're like, oh, we're going to pull this like multi-billion-dollar movie franchise out of here.
So
and people there, they've rectified a lot of the things there, but New Zealanders are still feeling the impact of.
Yeah, they probably don't like the tours going on either.
Yeah, and they're probably not entirely happy about what went down with that movie for
No,
very
I
good
wouldn't
reason.
be.
Yeah.
Because that is shitty. And even you said the Amazon series isn't being filmed there.
They're not even filming in New Zealand anymore. Amazon, once they bought the license,
probably because they went back on some of the laws that they tried to get them to do. Yeah.
That sucks.
I'm sure they're like, okay, well, we're good now.
Yeah.
We don't need you to film here.
They're gonna just do like CGI.
Almost certainly,
everything.
Especially with all like the tech coming out, like they did with the Mandalorian with the big.
That's
CG
all I was
rooms.
thinking of just now. They called it like the volume with like the big, all that like.
Almost certainly every single set or scene is going to be filmed.
Which is like that's cool, but it does suck that like. I don't know, like the practical effects are also really cool, or like actual sets, like the way that they made those,
like helping the New
insane.
Zealand film industry when you're not trying to ruin
not trying to fuck it over.
Yeah, when you're not trying to ruin it, and then
like actually bringing in jobs.
Yeah, but I don't know. One day we'll go see them.
Also, if I was an actor, I'd be so much happier getting to live in New Zealand than just like in a green screen room.
Yeah,
or, like
that's true.
in what the Mandalorian used, where it's like a bunch of TVs around you.
Yeah,
even though that was cool for the Mandalorian. Like if I had the option to go to New Zealand, I'd rather go to New Zealand.
It's easy to make space stuff, not here. Yeah. But like if you're like, wow, there's just lots of cool grass. That we have that in the world. So it kind of sucks. But I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to touch on, like, that's an impact culturally.
The other thing, and I kind of touched on it a little, in the movies, they go a lot into what Gandalf was doing. And I think I said a little bit of that, but, like, there's whole storylines of him going to the necromancer and realizing who the necromancer is, which is Sauron. I always want to say Saruman, and it makes me so mad that Tolkien has two villains
and Saruman.
so close in name, because then I get terrified.
That's like a big fantasy trope, I feel like, of things that are just too closely named.
You made up Gandalf and Sauron, but you had to do Saruman. You couldn't think of, like,
something a little different.
Like, you made up the name Galadriel, but you can't make up a new name, so the two villains don't sound the same. So that one does drive me insane, because I always am like, what am I reading? But yeah, so that basically is where Gandalf was that whole time, which has some pretty cool scenes. We get Galadriel in this, where we don't get in the books. She's in the Lord of the Rings movies, Cate Blanchett, we love her. Elrond does more. There's a lot more of, like, the wizards and, like, the almighty elves, which I do like that, additives and preservatives. But the love story is stupid.
Yeah. And we'll stand by that.
Oh, last thing, my littlest pet peeve, I hate that the kids of Bard call their dad Da. It drives me fucking insane, because they yell it the whole second half of the second movie, and the third movie they're just like, Da, where are you going? And I want to scream. Like, it felt annoying just saying it, but I had to say it for you to, like, hear
to
it.
understand
Marina
why.
had to, like, look me in the eyes while I said it too. It's the worst. If you feel annoyed by me saying it, just trust me, hearing it for a whole 2 hours is like, just say dad,
because I'm not sure I'm gonna watch that.
But I'm gonna make you watch it now. I'm gonna do a compilation of just them saying that.
No.
Stephen Colbert's in the movies.
What?
He got a
he got a cameo, I remember.
It's like a millisecond cameo.
I did not know this.
He's in Lake Town.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So that's that I guess is what I
had
thought
no idea.
of all the things.
Yeah, of all the things. By the way, Stephen Colbert was in the movie.
At least Ed Sheeran wasn't. That wasn't a dig at Ed Sheeran, that was a dig at Game of Thrones. Anyways. Okay. Marina wants me to shut the hell up.
No, I just was like, wait, I don't think people are gonna know. But then you said Game of Thrones. Yeah.
It doesn't, here's what I was trying to say. It doesn't feel good when a celebrity is so obvious in a fantasy or something you're trying to get really into, and then
sucks you out a little bit, yeah.
But Stephen Colbert blended in. I didn't even know it was him until someone told me. I had to rewatch.
Oh my gosh, that's cool. I actually have to look at that. I'll just look.
It was literally a millisecond. He
I would want to do that.
Yeah, I would. Oh god, I want to do that.
Yeah,
they do that in Star Wars a lot too.
Yeah, they do. So that's pretty much gonna wrap us up, I think.
I think it will. Thank you for being our guest.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It was fun.
That was pretty fun. I'm glad that you chose The Hobbit. I don't even know if we mentioned that.
Yes, this was my pick.
Yes.
Which we were happy about. We were dying to read it.
Really fun to revisit. Again, going into any fantasy, you get really like engulfed in the world and world building, and it's awesome. I don't know. It's just fun.
There's so much more we couldn't even touch
I know, we just don't have time to talk about it. But that's gonna be it for The Hobbit.
Yes.
Next time on our like 1 year anniversary, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
We're doing our spooky season. So we're going to be covering some Edgar Allan Poe stories
with another guest,
special
maybe.
Guest.
Ooh. Find out who it is.
You'll have to tune in.
But yeah, we're super excited about
it's going to be a few different stories. Our guest is picking a few stories for us, and then we're each going to pick a story as well. So we're going to be discussing a few, because he's not like a novelist. He's short stories and poems.
Yeah, I thought you meant our guest, and I was like, he's not a novelist for sure.
Yeah, I know he's not.
Sure you are.
But just another really big Edgar Allan Poe fan.
Yeah.
But
so we're excited. Another Edgar Allan Poe fan's gonna come. We'll post on our social medias which stories we'll read, so you guys can read along. So pay attention to that.
Yeah, you can follow us on all of our accounts. On Instagram and TikTok, we're Summer Reading List Pod. So go follow us there. On Twitter, we are Summer List Pod, and on Facebook, you can just search us by our name, Summer Reading List, and we'll pop right up. Give us a like. Also follow us so that you keep up to date with everything. We post on all of those, so go follow us everywhere. We post different things on different pages, so if you want to keep up with all of our funny insights and the memes we post about all of our novels,
so many
you need
tweets
to follow us everywhere.
that we've like retweeted or done that are just so funny to me. I'll be scrolling.
So go follow our Twitter. Yeah, it's really good. I promise.
Share with your friends.
I can vouch for it. I follow them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that's gonna be it for
Holds
us,
a knife
guys.
to you. Holds sting to you.
Sting.
Anyways. last final nerdy thing.
Yes, but so thanks for watching
Thanks,
/
guys.
listening. We'll catch you here in spooky season.
Ooh.
Bye.
Bye.